that always makes it good. And because we get to share our horror stories. And by sharing horror stories, we learn how to avoid horror stories. That's my goal, is to keep you guys from getting into situations. And it's not hard. It's just, you just do a few simple things. Numero uno is treat others like you would like to be treated. All right, the test, the pre-test. A person under 18 can buy a house in Kentucky, true or false?
False. False.
Everybody say false? It is true. They can buy a house in Kentucky. However, a minor cannot be held to a binding contract. So if they get a house under contract, get to the closing table and change their mind, then they can walk because they are under 18. But if they sign and close, then they own property. You got to read these things very carefully, because one little word misunderstood can make a difference. Surveys and mortgage inspections are not necessary. True or false?
I hate how you wrote these.
I didn't write it. I wish I had the brain power for that.
False.
Everybody say true. Who says true? Change one word and it's going to make sense. Surveys and mortgage inspections are not required. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it is false. They're very necessary. However, the problem nowadays with surveys is, like, we probably have 600, 700 home inspectors in Jefferson County and our region. We probably only got about 15 or 20 surveyors. I called 4 a few weeks ago. I couldn't find one that was under 2 months out. So if you get to the survey paragraph and they want to survey, I don't, honestly, it's going to be a challenge. So
Will it?
just start calling early and give yourself plenty of time to do the survey, even if it means you have, yes ma'am.
I got a legal question.
Okay.
Should we check on there that we give them that right to do the survey? Because what happens if we as agents
Well, it's not worded that way.
don't? Okay,
You have to put in you have to have a survey done by a specific date, period of time. So you need to talk to them early in the process about a survey and let them know, hey, how long does the rate lock last?
Right.
So there's a lot of, Heather's going to send us a name of a surveyor that she's going to list. Thanks, Heather. But yeah, when we'll go over that paragraph when we get to it. You'll see what I'm talking about. A good faith deposit is not required in Kentucky. True or false? Come on, guys.
True.
It is not required in Kentucky. True or false? That is true. I've sold 2 houses where I did not have good faith deposits. It doesn't make for a very strong offer. However, they're not required. My range is a fixture. True or false?
True.
True. It is false.
False.
A range you can typically unplug and slide out of the cabinet space, unless of course it's a built-in cooktop or something like that. So that's why in paragraph 1, all these things are mentioned. You either want them to stay or want them not to stay.
With a gas range.
Well, it gets to the definition of a tool. Are you a tool?
Well.
Yes, with the Lord.
If it's a gas range, it stays. It's a fixture because you need a tool.
Well, some have quick disconnects. You're talking about the gas line.
Yep.
Yeah, they connect to the range. I would say it to be safe, put it into.
Yeah, I bought it. 3rd month in the business, I bought a new oven for somebody because they took it and I didn't write it in the contract and
You got to buy her.
I got to buy my range. Everybody will.
Typically,
No.
typically, if it requires more than your hands to remove, then it could be considered a fixture. But the thing is, though, you don't want to. Because what happens is one party thinks it stays, the other party thinks it goes. Then you get to the week before closing, and you get into World War III. and I'm not gonna close. Well, if you work this stuff out at the beginning, then you don't have these problems. Work things out in the beginning, not the week of closing. Unfortunately, most people wait till the week of closing. A seller of a rental property can evict the tenant upon sale of the house. True or false?
False.
Who said false? Nice. It is false. The lease runs with the property. So if it has a lease, what is today, January something? If you sell a house, it has a lease that goes through December 31st of 21, then you've just sold an investment property. So, unless they're on a month-to-month lease. If they're on a month-to-month lease, usually requires 30-day notice for them to be gone. Here's what you have to write in the contract though, if it's on a month-to-month lease. Seller shall give notice of 30 days to vacate, 30 days to leave upon acceptance. Happened to us, we had a 30-day close. The seller didn't give notice of the 30 days to the tenant until 2 weeks into the contract. So therefore, we were delayed 2 weeks of possession because the tenant was legally allowed to stay there. A copy of a power of attorney is sufficient for a closing. True or false? It's false. Unless it's been previously recorded at the courthouse, then a copy is sufficient. Like when I call Borders to do a POA for me, they'll get it signed and they'll go ahead and record it at the courthouse. And then the whichever side can bring a copy at that point. But it's always best to have, and I've had many closings, not my own, but agents in the office, delayed because the people did not bring the original POA with them. So it's very easy to call Borders. They'll do it for you very inexpensively, or maybe free if you use them to close your deals. The thing with Borders, and in your sheet, I give a list of preferred vendors that I like. You know, a lot of people in our office think that Harry is like our answer man when I'm about to know if we get into like they'll call him for advice, but then they'll use Limestone to close. So if you're going to use Limestone or one of the other, and don't get me wrong, I love Trevor and Mike at Limestone. They're great people. But if you're going to send all your business to whoever, closing attorney, then maybe you should ask them the questions. We send all of our stuff to Borders, everything we can.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the renter? Sorry, I tried to stop you, but I didn't get in time. Would you
I'm hearing a voice from the clouds. I'm sorry.
ask for a copy of the notice for a renter? Like, would you say, hey, we want to see that you've notified the renter that they have to be out?
Well, if it's in the contract that they're going to initiate the 30 days, if they don't do it, then they're in breach of contract. So you could certainly ask for it if you're unsure. It wouldn't hurt. I'm not sure what form landlords use to tell a tenant that their 30 days is coming up. But if there is one, you could certainly ask for that. Does that answer? Is this Heather that asked that question?
Yes, it's Heather. And yes, that does answer my question. You said that they waited 2 weeks. So I wanted to know how to cover your buyer to know that has been done.
Well, again, put in the contract that it will be done upon acceptance, and they should do it or else they're in breach of the contract. So you could certainly ask for something from the seller if they have something. They may just call them up and say, again, I'm not a expert on landlord-tenant law or anything, so I'm not sure how they do that. Anybody have any rental properties? How do you notify somebody of the 30 days?
Through a letter.
Through a letter? Yeah. Yes, Heather, you can ask for a letter. Okay. It is okay to allow a buyer to move into a house before closing. True or false?
Not unless it's agreed upon.
I represented a seller one time and we let the buyer do that because the seller really wanted to. And then she died. Oh, God.
Wow.
And then you went into the whole scenario. We could not get.
Well, the question is it okay to allow a buyer to move into a house before it closes?
It's okay.
It's okay for this buyer.
Read it very carefully. It is not okay, guys. Early possessions will bite you in the butt so often. If you do it as your last resort. I had a true story. A friend of mine, you and Scott know him, he drives you around sometimes. Sold him a house. He went with a friend of a friend for his mortgage lender instead of the person that I sent him to. And he asked me permission, like a week into the contract, that he could start moving some things into the garage. And I called the listing agent and she said, sure, that's no problem. So 3 days before closing, got a call from the friend of a friend lender. His loan was denied in final underwriting. So I called him and said, hey, bro, I know you got the call too. We're going to try to save this, but be ready to get yourself out of the garage. Well, then he tells me that he had moved his family and all of his belongings into the house, had met all the neighbors, and had been living there for the last 3 weeks. So, I in turn get him with the lender that I set him up with originally, who got him through underwriting within 4 days, and we closed within 10 days of his denial from the friend of a friend. That could have been a nightmare. Well, how do you get somebody out of a house if they don't own it, but they're living in it, and they don't want to leave the house? How do you get them out? Eviction. How long does it take? How long does it take for an eviction to go through? 6 months?
How long does probate take? 'Cause my lady died.
Yeah, I don't know.
wouldn't wait.
So, no, it's not okay. Don't do it. Don't do it unless you absolutely have to. Okay. An ambiguous term in a contract is construed against the author of the term, true or false? Come on, somebody.
False.
So you can write anything, and if it's ambiguous, it's okay.
No.
Sorry, I just had to realize that it's construed.
Well, and for the sake of time, if you write something that's ambiguous, you are held liable for that ambiguous term. We had this happen here not last year. An agent wrote something in paragraph 28, and the seller or the buyer, whichever's the opposite side, didn't do what she thought she wrote in paragraph 28. So she emails me and asked me, and I read what she wrote. I'm like, I don't even understand what you were trying to say. And I emailed it to Harry. I said, Harry, can you decipher what this means? He goes, I don't understand what she asked for. So anyway, yes, if you write something that that's ambiguous, then it is how you are responsible for that. You want to use language that a third grader can understand. Because if you're in front of a retired judge at a mediation or an arbitration, they start asking you, who crafted this language in paragraph 28? And you raise your hand like this. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. So write easy to understand. Do not try to be an attorney. Don't use legal language. Just write it plain and simple so everybody can understand it. Spouses should always sign the deed when selling property. True or false?
True.
True. A married buyer must have their spouse sign on the mortgage. True or false?
False.
It is false. However, a lot of mortgage companies now are requiring the spouse to sign. There's a way around that. Talk to your favorite closing attorney and they can tell you how to get around that. A realtor should always choose the home inspection company. True or false?
False.
Well, give them a list of 3 or so, and hopefully they use the one you want. Then for paragraph 10B2, a buyer can terminate for any reason. True or false?
False.
It's actually true and false. 10B2 says if you hire a licensed professional that does an inspection and provides a complete written report, the buyer may terminate within the inspection period. Then, I mean, they can. The house can be perfect. Nothing comes up on the inspection. They can still terminate. That's your get out of jail free card when buyers get buyer's remorse. Do not telegraph to the listing agent that your buyer's got buyer's remorse the day after they go into contract. All all you're gonna do is make that seller angry. The commission is earned upon acceptance. And if you say, my guy changed his mind, I wanted to let you know so you get the house right back up on the market. If you want me to, I can do an inspection to get out of it legally. This happens all the time. Don't do that, guys, because then the seller is going to accuse you of acting in bad faith, not acting in good faith, which means they may not sign the termination of the lease. Your buyer may not get the earnest money back. So you got to use the legal outs in the contract. And 10b2 is your get out of jail free card for your buyer's remorse fee. But you do not telegraph it to the other side, or else you could be not helping your buyer out at all. Everybody wants to be nice, but that's one instance where you don't want to be too nice. All right, now we'll get to your materials here. Couple of things. The first page, I have a list of, for those of you that are brand new, that don't know who to use for anything, I would not hesitate to use these folks. Elaine, Harry does all my closings that he can, has been for ever since I've been in the business, which is now 17 years, not 15 years. Meg, 17 years as well. Oh wait, it's 18 years.
18, I'm 16.
It was 2003. Oh my God. So 18 years. Elaine's the one that saved the guy that moved in early, that moved his family in. Elaine's the one that saved the deal, got him closed within 10 days. And home warranties are Band-Aids that may or may not stop the bleeding. But if I'm gonna use one, it's Troy at Home Membership. All righty, we're gonna go over a few niceties here. How to be a good agent. Respect for the public. Follow the golden rule. Treat others like you want to be treated. You guys, Jennifer, how many times have you see a listing come up that your buyer may like, and then you look at the listing agent and you start, oh my God, your stomach just sinks. I mean, guys, the reputation you develop now will follow you through your career. And guess what? There's a lot of agents out there that are horrific to work with. Don't be those people. Respond promptly to inquiries for information. Schedule appointments and showing as far in advance as possible. That's kind of hard with our current market conditions. But a balanced market is when the houses sell in 5. When the balanced market is
I'm not sure.
The balanced market is when the house sells around 5 months. Well, guess what? We're not in a balanced market. We're in a hyper seller's market. Houses are lasting less than a day in many cases. A prospective buyer who decides not to view an occupied home, let the other agent know, because people get their houses ready for showings, and if you just don't show up, that agent's going to be very upset with you. Many times the sellers are sitting across the street watching, so they'll know that you didn't show up. Never criticize the property in the presence of the occupant. I'm going to take that a step further with the technology today. Don't criticize the property, period, unless you're in the car or somewhere out, because half the houses we show nowadays have cameras and audio recording. So you don't want to do that. When showing an occupied home, always ring the doorbell or not, or both. Announce yourself loudly before entering. Anytime that if you go to a closed room, the doorway is closed, knock on the door before you go in. I have had a shotgun pulled on. I had a verified appointment once, confirmed appointment, went to the house. We were down in the basement, and somebody yelled from the top of the stairs, who the hell is down there? And I walked I looked, the dude had a shotgun. Standing at the top of the stairway, I said, right along with Keller Williams, did your agent not inform you of the show? This was before we had some of the technology or showing time that you should be using. His agent never told him that we were going to be at the house. So he literally had a shotgun at the top of the stairs. So always knock, even on vacant homes, knock, because you don't know what might be going on inside. If occupants are home during the showings, ask for their permission for using the telephone or bathroom. I don't think many people have telephones anymore, so you scratch that out. Meet all your deadlines. Promise only what you can deliver and keep your promises. Do not tell people what you think. Tell them what you know. I had a kid that was in our office when Meg and I started. He's now a fireman. I ran into him at Kroger's the other day. Good, great kid, but he walked around every house he showed. He walked around like he was a home inspector, pointing out every defect about the house. That's why he's a fire person now, because he never sold any houses because no house was good enough for his people because he pointed out all the potential defects. So if you don't know something, if somebody asks you about something, don't tell them. Just say, you know what, if we end up buying this, writing on this house, make sure to tell us home inspector check it out. Unless you know something, don't say something. People would rather you say, I don't know, but I'll find out, than you make up something. You start making up stuff, it's gonna bite you in the butt. You are responsible for everyone you allow inside a property. If you're showing a house and there's a bunch of kids there, you gotta be careful. Had this happen, the kids like shiny objects, they'll pick stuff up, put it in their pocket. Well, you're responsible for that. So if they have kids, the kids are out of control, you may encourage them to leave the kids at home next time, or just make sure that they keep them corralled. You are responsible for what those kids do. Never enter a listed property. Never allow your buyers to go into a property unaccompanied. Fast track to losing your law privileges. When showing property, keep all members of the group together. Never allow unaccompanied access to property without permission. Enter property only with permission, even if you have the lock box key or combination. Leave the property how you found it. Respect for your peers. Respond promptly to all communications and courteously. Notify the listing agent if there appears to be inaccurate information on the listing. You try to be nice. Don't push the red violate button. Give them the opportunity to fix it. Show courtesy, trust, and respect other real estate professionals. Do not prospect. I had this happen to me. Do not prospect at other agents' open houses. Don't prospect their buyers. Don't prospect the buyers that are in the house if you're in the house. That happened to me when I was with somebody. One of the people at the open house, I was in the kitchen when people came up. Sir, there's an agent down in the basement that's trying to get us to work with. I thought you should know that. I called the broker the next day. That is not proper behavior. Return keys promptly. I used to have a problem. I would put the keys in my pocket and then drive a half an hour home and forgot to put it back in the lockbox. And I can't tell you how many times I did that early on. So make sure you put the keys back in the lockbox. To be successful, mutual respect is essential. The reputation business and the reputation you develop now will follow you around for the rest of your life, real estate life. All right. The sales contractor, how to save. I can up that now to about 150,000 over your real estate career. That's probably how much I've spent by making mistakes. Make sure you understand this contract, new people, old people, everybody. There's some things in there that you don't understand, or you can get yourself into trouble, or your buyer, or both of you. And we've got a situation now where a buyer is accusing us of not properly explaining what they were signing. And so it's like, and my question to the attorney when we get to mediation, well, are we supposed to literally read every line, all 364 lines in this contract to our buyers? I don't know. There needs to be some type of middle ground there. It's a good idea to give a copy of your contract to your buyers during the buyer consult before they buy a house, so they kind of at least have a chance to familiarize themselves with it. You're going to be dealing with a lot of agents that have no idea what they're doing, right? Okay, and so I don't want you guys to be those agents. I want you to have a great understanding of what you're doing. There's a lady in our office that used to come to my contract class like every month for like 2 years. She's still in our office. She sells about $10 million, $12 million a year now. And she is one of the top, I mean, she knows her stuff. She never quit coming on. She never quit coming until she just mastered this. I admire that. Never had a problem out of her in the 12 or how many every year she's been here. It's awesome. This business is about learning, and this contract changes all the time, and laws change all the time, and you gotta stay up on it. It's hard for me to stay up on it. So it should be probably really hard for you guys. The thing that you most importantly says at the top of page 1, this is a legally binding contract, like I said earlier. But there's no such thing as buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse is called breach of contract. There's legal ramifications. We have one going on now where the guy's being sued for $100,000 because they backed out on $1 million transaction in Lake Forest. Suing $60,000. The commission was on $1 million house, $60,000. The agent is suing for $60,000. They're also suing for the difference between what the house, what they had it under contract for, and what it ended up selling, which I think was a $30,000 variance, plus legal fees, plus everything else. So there's no such thing as buyer's remorse. You've got to use paragraph 10b2. That's your only way out. Calendar days, calculating days. All days are calendar days, midnight to midnight. There's only one form that we use that says business day. Somebody asked me in a class several years ago, well, what about weekends and holidays? You got in the wrong business if you don't want to work weekends or holidays, because this is a 365-day-a-year job for the most part. But they're calculated midnight to midnight. This changed a couple of years ago. It used to be 11:59 p.m. It's calculated beginning on the first day following the acceptance day, or if applicable, notification day. We're going to get into that here in a second. Again, it's a legally binding contract. Explain the ramifications of default. Better buyer count. Tell them the $1 million story I just told you. It's a true story. It's still ongoing. You got another one that's a $30,000 story that's still ongoing. This is true stuff. Buyers cannot change their mind. Cannot change their mind. There's only one thing today. Counsel your buyers. Guys, you can't change your mind. If you change your mind, the only way you get out of this legally is to pay for a home. That's it. That's the only way. You can't tell your lender to disqualify you for the loan. The lender's not going to issue a denial of credit letter and get sued because it won't issue one unless it's actually denied. So please, please, please. Again, you can give a copy to the buyers early and let them review it, highlight the important parts. Hard dates versus soft dates. There's some paragraphs in our contract that say time is of the essence. Other paragraphs have this, they have a spot for dates, but it doesn't say time is of the essence. Anything that says time is of the essence, that's a hard date. If something does not occur by that date and the next day comes, then it's over. It's done. So we're going to talk about that. Oh, the person I was bragging on is attending the class. You can tell them who you are if you want. I'm not going to.
Do what?
I said you can tell them who you are if you would like to.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that all the examples you're going to use that are going south are probably going to be me.
No, there's no question about that.
Who's talking about it?
Oh, Whitney.
That's Whitney Brown.
Yeah, Jennifer, I hear you laughing. That's enough out of you.
Exactly.
Hey, Whitney, would you say the $100,000 story is true? Whitney?
Oh, hang on. My audio's going in and out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the people that are getting sued for $100,000.
Yeah, it's actually 60, but close enough.
So they're going after the commission on it. Okay, gotcha. True
Yeah,
story.
she's going for double commission because I didn't ask for mine.
Brad Calendar?
Crap. Sorry, my audio is like,
Yeah, Whitney will be in about
This is
90% of these. stores.
cool technology that we have these days. That we can do this kind of.
I can't get the, oh. I'm sorry, my thing isn't working.
We're done with you.
Oh, thanks.
Please, please.
Somebody said Brett. Okay, this calendar right here, this is gonna save you $100,000 in your first year by itself, if you understand it. And you'd be surprised how many agents don't understand it. So what we're talking about here is the offer date and the acceptance date. What does that constitute? Because if you don't know what it actually is and you miss one of those dates, you can be looking at a lot of potential liability. Because your buyer is not going to understand this stuff. It's up to you to make sure that you follow these. Where's this the biggest? Where is this the biggest thing? It's on the inspection paragraph. If you miss your inspection deadline and a house you're selling needs $10,000 worth of repairs, and you miss it, guess who's paying the $10,000? Yeah, you. At least you should. I take responsibility for missing those dates. I don't try to get my buyers to cancel the contract. I don't try to talk them out of a house that they love because I didn't understand or remember when the deadlines were. So this is the most important thing we're going to go over today. I'm going to use a calendar that I made a couple of years ago, and we're going to say Tuesday the 3rd is the offer date. Then it goes back. It comes back as a counter offer on Wednesday, counter it back on Thursday, then on Friday, it gets accepted. The checkbox next to accepted is checked and they sign it. And the agent emails it back. It's called two things. It's called delivery and it's called notification. So what this means is your acceptance date in this case, because it was delivered on the 6th, that's the acceptance date. But the contract says except for your timelines, acceptance date not included. So that means in this case, Saturday the 7th is day 1 of your timeline. It was accepted and delivered on the 6th. Saturday the 7th is day 1. Everybody understand that? Okay, now I'm going to throw a wrench into it. Your buyer the seller signs the acceptance at say 10 o'clock Friday night, and the agent doesn't email it to you until Saturday morning. Well, what happens then?
Day 1 would be Sunday.
Yes, sir. You win the prize. I'm not sure what it is, period. Yes. Because, what's that? That's correct. The acceptance date is really the date it was signed, it was the date it was delivered. So if you're an agent, and you get something accepted, you want to get it over right away. Because another thing that could happen, if one party signs right here and it's not delivered, well then another offer comes in that's better than yours. They can call you and say, I'm sorry, we got a better offer, even though it was signed, accepted, but not delivered. There's signed, sealed, and delivered. That's what real estate is all about. Up until it's delivered and signed, another offer can come in on top of you. Good. Everybody get that? She's funny. The girl that came to class all the time. So anyway, once it's signed and clicked accepted, you got to get it back. As until it's delivered, it doesn't count. But in our scenario, they delivered it on the 6th. Saturday is day 1. So let's say you do a 10-day repair, 10-day inspection period. You can whatever technology you use. Back in the day, 10 years ago, before Google Calendar and everything, before I used it, I would literally print out blank calendars of every month of the year. And and I had folders of carry, we didn't have the paperless technology that we do today. And I would keep these, when I got something in the contract, I would keep this calendar and I would circle day 10, like that's midnight on that, or that time is 11:59 p.m. That's the deadline for either to submit a repair request or send a termination. So if you miss that, I don't know what to tell you. You've got to understand this calendar. So day 1 is Saturday, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, and day 10. Repair request or termination is due by midnight that day. Okay? If you wait till the 17th, you're out of luck. You're going to be spending some of that $100,000.
I think too, one thing that a lot of newer agents get stuff on is like if the other agent will put unless accepted by 7 p.m. on whatever the date is, Saturday. And they'll look at that as the acceptance date. But it isn't always, like if someone signs it early, a whole day early, let's say you gave them 24 hours, it's really the date that it's signed and delivered. No, correct?
It's always the day.
Because we had somebody recently that just came up, it was the reverse. They said, oh no, but it says unless accepted by 8 p.m. on this Saturday, but it all got signed and delivered on the Friday, which is almost 24 hours earlier than what they.
Absolutely, yeah. The deadline for acceptance is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is when it was actually accepted and delivered. But that is true, Meg.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
I think I remember the answer to this, but I had an agent that said, well, we won't sign unless you send us the whole inspection report. But that they're not allowed to say that, are they?
Who's like you had who wouldn't sign what?
The sellers wouldn't sign the release unless we sent the entire inspection report to them. And I was like, I don't think that's the way this works, but
The inspection report is the property of the buyer. If they choose to share it with the sellers, that's their option. You know, what I would recommend doing, and again, if the agent doesn't understand paragraph 10, then call me and I'll call the broker. What you can do is send over a copy of the receipt or the first page of the inspection report showing that what home team inspected 123 Main Street, and it usually has a picture of the house, the whole 9 yards. You just show proof that you did an inspection, that you're not required to send over the whole inspection report. In fact, it's very bad form to send over the entire inspection report. That's being a really nasty bad agent. You should clip, snip, whatever. I use a program called Snagit, and I snag the appropriate stuff out of the inspection report and send over that part. I don't send over the entire inspection report. That's just being mean. So is everybody crystal clear on this calendar? Any questions at all? This is the most important thing in here. Cool. And nobody's going to miss any inspection deadline. All righty. When you have we list houses for sale, and that guarantees our right to a commission. But most of us take buyers out and show them houses for months without listing those buyers. So I strongly suggest that you use a exclusive buyer's agency agreement. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because there's classes on that we offer here in the office on how to do that and so forth and so on. But I do recommend you list your buyers. If you're showing a house that's not currently on the market, you want to get a one-time showing agreement. This is showing that the FSBO or the off-market property, which you put right here, in your name and my name, and then your buyer's name, when the appointment is, and you're going to put here that the seller is going to pay you 3% or whatever you can negotiate, and get them to sign that. But it says at the top, it's not a listing. It's not a listing. They added that a few years ago because for sale by owners were hesitant to sign these. They thought they were getting into some type of listing agreement. So they put it on there so it's crystal clear. And you are allowed to give them a copy of the, in fact, you should give them a copy of the Consumer's Guide to Agency Relationships. And additionally, Kentucky law requires that all sellers fill out all residential sellers fill out a seller's disclosure form. And you are allowed to give that to them as well. All right, here's our victim. Our victim for the day. I guess I scared Anne Marie away. Did I scare you, Anne Marie? I'm sorry. All right. This is our victim house. It's not even on the market, but I've been using it for a year or so now, so I'm going to continue to, just so I don't have to reprint this stuff every month. But for newer agents, there's some things you need to know on the listing. This is the Flex single family Louisville full report. You're gonna need the listing number up here. This is the asking price, which is invisible to any agent searching from 200 to 250 or more. We're not selling shoes here, guys. Don't price your listings at $199.9. People set up searches for 200 to 225 will not see your listing. A lot of people are still think we buy houses through the Homes magazine. Remember, Meg, we started the Homes magazine, was that thick? Have you seen one lately? I don't even know if there's more than 2 pages. They may not. I mean, we used to run out and grab them 14, 15 years ago. So if you can, price your houses on even numbers, so it'll be visible to more people online. Most websites use $25,000 increments to search. If you're representing a buyer, you want to make sure that you go in under the amount so that you will capture houses that are priced on this selling shoe price. When I was in the shoe business, we would $100 shoes, we would price them $99.99 because it sounded cheaper. Well, you don't do that in today's world of real estate. And then down at the bottom here, you're going to need the deed book and the page, the block and the lot, sublot. And then right here, that's showing you how much you're going to make if you get this house under contract. That's cooperating commission, 3%. You should always jump over to the PBA and just verify that the information that's on the listing page is correct. Verify the parcel ID, which becomes this 12-digit number right here. You divide that in 3 parts, it becomes the block, the lot, and the sublot. And then the deed book and the page are on the purchase contract as well. And that this number will always remain the same unless the lot is subdivided somehow. This one changes every time a house sells or gets refinanced, because they record it in a different deed book and page down at the courthouse. This shows the square footage over here according to the PVA, but don't put much faith in that number because it's usually wrong. And then it shows the sales history down below the map. Here, this one last sold in 2019 for $150,000. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so just verify the stuff on the PVA. Oops. All righty. Residential sales contract. Again, it says it up the top. It says this is a binding contract. They can't change their mind. And what did we just talk about? Calculating day. This is so important that they put it up the very top before you even get into the paragraphs. You put your name, it will go here as the selling agent. The listing agent's names or names will go up here. Is there anybody in here on a team? Do you operate as Team Vanilla or do you do both agents? You'll be on there and Jenny will be in.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
If you're on a team, like I think the Withrow Group, okay, they changed this month. This is brand new. What you do here is you put your name here. Okay, and then for MLS reporting, selling members team, if other than above. So you would put the Withrow Group here, Jimmy Welch would put Jimmy Welch team here. But the reason they changed this is the KREC does not recognize teams are not licensed. Teams are just names. They're not licensed. You have to have a licensee, somebody that has a real estate license, go up here. If you want, for MLS reporting, if you want it to show up as Jimmy Welch team or the Withrow Group, whatever, that's what you would write here.
Okay, so you still are relying on that co-agent to change it properly by
That's right.
putting the team in there.
And it's going to be a nightmare.
Yes,
for the next few
totally.
months.
Well, because there's so many people who don't care about teams and reporting and all.
Oh,
that.
no, and they, it'll clearly say two names up here and they'll put one but not the
Yeah.
other. I think,
Awesome.
Stacy or, on Jimmy's team spends a lot of time correcting this, or somebody on Jimmy's team spends a lot of time correcting this.
So
Brad, do you know how the report will look too if you sold it, since it's gonna have your name on it now too, if you're in a team,
No.
like,
No, if you're on a team and you use a team name as for MLS reporting, it's only gonna have the team name. You will not show up on it. Okay? It'll show up, the only time it'll show up with what's up here is if you don't put anything on line 20. Does that make sense? Does that have it?
yeah, I don't understand line 20 then. I mean, what's the,
You're gonna put,
yeah,
Jimmy Welch team right there. You're gonna put your name right here where it says Brad Long, and you're gonna put Jimmy Welch team right there. Okay, 'cause that,
oh, I.
Heather,
Okay.
Heather,
I was-
the idea is that there are people like Jimmy and myself and the Withrows and the Prices and Brad and everybody who has a team or wants a team. They want to have all of the reporting of the numbers for each month and at the end of the year as a team. But legally, they need to figure out who the agents are involved. So that's literally just for reporting only.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whatever you put on line 20 is what's gonna show up on the MLS as the selling agent. So this is new as of this year. So if you don't understand it, give me a shout later. And your team owners may not know what it means either. I don't know if any team owners on the call. What?
I don't know what that, I heard you when you said it at the meeting.
You operate under a group team name? So MLS only shows your team name.
No, and that's what I need to talk about,
Well,
how to figure that out later.
that's a whole different ballgame.
If you want.
If you want. On my team, I don't do this. I put my name and they put their name and my name or my name and their name.
And can we just do that?
Yeah.
And it's just fine, we
That's
don't have to do
You don't have to do that.
that. Okay, because I wondered if they were making us do it.
No.
We had to sign that paper
For
last year.
people who want to have reporting.
Nothing to do with that. It's only for teams that operate under a team name and don't give the agents individual credit. So,
Operate on the MLS as a team name.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm not doing it.
That's what.
That's a
Yeah.
whole lot of
Okay.
work.
Not operate in general.
yeah.
I'm not doing it.
So you don't have to fill out all this stuff. I put the email address, your license number, and the telephone number where you can be reached. Then you put the property address right here, 2907 Waldo Beach. And keep in mind, guys, you can sell more than one property on the sales contract. I think Katie No sold, I think, 10 properties a few months ago and came to me and asked me, and you can sell packages on here, you can sell 2 properties on here, or if the house is listed with the street number and maybe the lot next door that goes with it, make sure you put the parcel ID and the address to the lot next door. If you don't, they may get to the closing table and bought the house, but didn't get the lot next door that went along with it. So you can put, if you're selling a package of houses, you can type up a Word doc, addendum number 1, and list all the property addresses and the parcel IDs, and simply right here, see addendum number 1, listing properties, selling under the sales. Deed book and page, verify this like we talked about, block and lot and sublot, county of Jefferson. And now we get into the fixture thing. This is a big deal. And there's certain things that are becoming a bigger deal all the time. All these things up here automatically stay with the house. However, many listing agents don't tell their sellers that. So you may get to the final walkthrough and there's no bathroom mirror, or they took down the curtain rod. Well, they can't do that. So we put together a closing expectation sheet that we share with the other side reminding them what saves and what doesn't.
So can you share that closing expectation sheet?
Yeah, stop by after the class and I'll email it to you. If anybody else wants it, just shoot me an email. But all that stuff stays. But one thing that's a big problem right now is security systems. Many times they're leased and many times they're owned. But that listing agents don't discover that until like the week before closing. They do a final walkthrough and then they go in and there's a big hole in the wall where the box used to be. Because it was either owned by the seller, like Vivint or whatever that company is. It's out doing a lot of advertising. They charge like $2,500 for the box. You pay for it over, what's that? And you pay for it over the course of your, it's really expensive. Probably not the best company to go with. But it's not paid for, and this needs to be discussed early in the process. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
When
on
you
your
list the
listing
house, you need to
appointment.
find out if it's leased or owned, whatever. Because mine, when I got my security system, they gave me the box. I paid for it at the time. It wasn't $2,500, but it would stay. And hopefully, if people wanted a security system, they would just re-up with the company. But need to talk about that because it's becoming a big issue. This is where you spend a lot of money here, y'all. These check boxes here, people forget to check these all the time. Well, guess what? This has happened on my team like a month, not even a month ago. But they forgot to check the refrigerator. So what happened? We just bought a refrigerator. Refrigerators used to be relatively affordable. Now, some refrigerators cost as much as a car. So I'd be very careful here and make sure you check everything that you're buying, that your people want. If they want the washer and dryer, you need to write that in right here. Now, remember, what you're asking for here are things that could be considered a normal part of a home. You can't ask for personal property here unless it's a cash transaction. There's a lender involved, you cannot ask for personal property because they will make you either redo the contract or do an addendum, removing it from the contract or whatever. There's a lot of legal talk in continuing ed classes right now that certain attorneys are teaching that say you can't do personal property agreements because that makes us that we're not licensed to sell personal property. I'm not going to talk about the personal property agreements right now, but if you guys want to talk to me about it, you can call me. Attorneys are saying, one attorney in particular is saying in continuing ed classes, if we prepare a document conveying personal property, we're practicing law without a license. I don't know. Harry disagrees with this attorney. I'm not an attorney. I don't know who to believe. So I'm not going to talk about it right now, but y'all can come see me. But be sure and give some type of description. We had one a few months ago that they took the refrigerator out of the kitchen and replaced it with the refrigerator that was in the garage, which was a much lesser quality refrigerator. So be somewhat specific and even go as far as to take pictures of the appliances that are in place the day of the showing. Because you don't want to get there and have a little, it says refrigerators, and that means all the refrigerators. That means all of the refrigerators, not just the one in the kitchen. That little S is right there. That means if there's one in the garage, there's one in the basement, they all stay. Okay, so but be specific so people don't show up and there's a 4 square foot dorm refrigerator sitting there. Oh, trust
Well,
me.
that's a bigger problem now. You get to look at a house for 14 minutes.
Right.
I mean, you used to be able to go back and write all that down. Like I got to a point this summer where I was literally going to my phone and have 75 appliances because I'm trying to figure out which house was which
Yeah,
appliance.
exactly.
Let me have a system for that.
Well, I mean, you take every house you go into, you take pictures of the appliances.
Well, this summer, I mean, well, because we had some people, you didn't get a second showing. If you wanted the house, you had to write an offer in about 15 minutes. So Karen had a buyer that I was actually showing for her, And I just knew this was gonna be a hotspot. And I looked at my phone at the end of the day and I had shown them 8 properties and I had a refrigerator, washer, dryer, and a dishwasher for
No,
every
it-
single one of those properties.
It's difficult to,
Yeah.
it's difficult,
Yes.
but I don't know of any system, but, I don't know of any system, but you should probably come up with
I
something.
well, I mean, not for me specifically, but I think people
Yeah.
that are heavy in buyers, they reset the buyers on a week.
Sure.
Instead of kids on their phone, they're gonna have appliances.
I mean, you don't know. I mean, the best thing to do, if you don't know, is look at the pictures on the MLS. If there's no microwave in the kitchen, don't check microwave. But typically, I get on my team, Robin will call me 8 o'clock at night. She's driving from Bullitt County to Shelby County to sell a house up there. Can you write an offer for me? Of course. But I'm on the transaction desk writing an offer while she's driving about 65 or 64, whatever. And she can't remember what was in the kitchen. So I just jump on the MLS and I put what I see in the kitchen.
But she's a great example. How many transactions does she do, right?
About 70.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah.
In the car with them.
So I guess that looking on the MLS is a good way to refer. So if there's something, if there's a fixture.
I have a comment to make.
So sorry. I just basically said she's on my team and that's it. I'd be more than happy to help and take that phone call if you're selling 70 houses a year.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
from online. Sometimes when I'm not sure or like the photos aren't there, I just ask for the washer and dryer anyways, and the microwave and everything. And the agent will call me if they're like, there's no microwave at the house. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And that way I like make sure I cover all my bases instead of omitting it. And then they'll just counter back, no microwave or something, or washer and dryer doesn't stay.
Yeah, whatever works. Sometimes though, you don't want to counteroffer in this market. You want to go in strong in the first one, but try to be as accurate as you can. You don't want to elicit a counteroffer and then another one comes in on top of you before you get it accepted. So try to be as accurate as possible. Jessica,
Yes.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you too. Thanks for keeping us all out of jail.
Okay, if there's something, a fixture that you want removed, write it here. Sometimes there's a piece of garbage storage shed in the back, it's ready to fall down. If there's something you want the seller to remove, put it right there. Sometimes people love to leave pool tables, even though that's not a fixture. They weigh like 8,000 pounds, and people leave them because they don't want to pay the movers to haul them off. If you want to make sure that they take it, write it in here, even though it's not a fixture, it's legal. Okay, any questions so far? If you're in an area that is where the heat source is, or anything, the propane, if there's propane involved, you need to find out early on. You don't want to get to the closing table and have the seller slide your buyer a bill for $1,000 worth of propane. You want to talk about that early on. Is the tank leased or owned? I just bought a second house and I just bought a propane tank. So my propane tank is owned. So you need to find out. Sometimes they're leased and sometimes they're owned. How are we going to take care of the remaining propane in the tank? If you use LG&E or whatever utility company, they measure at the end of the month how much you've used and send you a bill accordingly. Propane, you fill up before you use it. So many times there's maybe hundreds of dollars worth of propane left in the tank. You want to talk about that and find out. Don't wait till the day before closing. What I'm trying to say.
So is there a way to, while we're talking about this, is there a way to discuss that on the contract? So like, maybe on the, page 6, put in like, this includes the remainder of the propane that's in the propane
You
tank.
could certainly ask.
Okay,
They can either say yea or nay.
okay.
If they just filled it up and spent, I don't know how much propane costs.
But is that way, like, if I'm writing a contract, I would write in there representing the buyer.
You could do that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
You can do anything as long as both parties agree to it.
Correct. I
There's
just
some
wanted
good
to.
language for that on the resource page. Maggie Terry and I think Emily Price got into a dialogue about that. That was good.
On the Facebook thing?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, write it in there, but just find out the details. Don't wait till too many agents wait till the end, and that's when the fights start happening. If you do everything at the beginning, there's no fights. So try to figure the stuff out early. And it says right here, the terms of all of this paragraph survive the closing and delivery of the deed. What's that mean? That means if they took the refrigerator and you closed, the contract's still enforceable to get the refrigerator back. But how do you get it back? Through some type of legal action. How much does legal action cost? Too much. If you take somebody to mediation, there's a 4-hour minimum for the mediator, and they can charge between $250 and $350 an hour. So at the minimum, it's going to cost $1,000, or it could be the last mediation I went to lasted 6 hours. So six times 350, that's how much? Higher mathematicians, whatever it is, it's more money than you want to spend to get a refrigerator back. So what do? You do your wash period, there's no refrigerator, what do you do? Don't close. The 2 words I want you to remember right now. Don't close. You want your money, everybody wants to get paid, but if it's not right, you cannot close. Because once you close, trying to get that stuff back is not easy. And many times you're going to end up buying it yourself. So if it's not right, don't close. Scott, will you repeat that?
If it's not right, don't close.
Thank you. Okay, we are getting there. We're at paragraph 2. That's good. We're ahead of schedule, sort of. So the purchase price, $200,000, earnest money deposit, which is optional in Kentucky, as we talked about, $2,000. Whitney, are you still on there?
I'm here.
Yay. Don't ever leave this class.
That's right. Whitney had a horrible situation a couple years or so ago, and $5,000. Was it 5,000 or 10,000?
Wait, hang on. Which situation are we talking about?
The appraisal, the bad appraisal that
Oh, it was 35,000.
the earnest money.
Oh, sorry. Earnest money was 5. The discrepancy of purchase price and appraisal was 35,000.
She was dealing with one of those idiot agents that doesn't even understand the contract. Now he owns his own brokerage. Not going to mention any names.
I was not the idiot in this scenario, just FYI.
No, you weren't. You did everything.
Not this time.
Right. So what we've discovered, since the small claims court has a limit of $2,500. So if you get an agent or a broker or a buyer or seller who doesn't understand the contract and refuses to release the good faith money, you can go to small claims court and retrieve, and easier than waiting 60 days for a 60-day letter, so forth and so on. So again, most agents are good, but as Whitney will attest, every now and again, you're going to run up against some real idiots.
I think I've run up against all of them too. I've single-handedly met all of them.
Well,
The year just started.
You got a list. Don't you have your own list now that you're generating who you don't want to work with?
I'm just laughing that everybody else is laughing in there too.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I hear you.
Don't get on Whitney's list. So,
Oh.
Because I know them all.
what's that?
I know all her stories. That's why I'm laughing.
I know. I'm pretty sure everyone knows all my stories.
So I just put 2,000 here. You can put whatever you want. Usually $1,000 is common. Houses over like 100,000, 150, sometimes 500. And people short on cash. There's no right or wrong regarding earnest money. What you have to remember about earnest money is that it can't be released back to the buyer until all 4 parties, both brokers and both buyer and seller, have signed a mutual release. And that's why I talked early on about not telegraphing your buyers had buyer's remorse, because the seller may refuse to sign that thing. Like Whitney's people, they had to wait almost 70 or 75 days to get their $5,000 back because the seller. What was that?
it was not a pleasant experience, and they were not happy, and they were mad at me, and there's nothing I could do.
Yeah, exactly. Because the seller got, even though they terminated for a totally valid reason, their agent didn't understand that paragraph. And the seller, whose father was an attorney, thought he knew everything. So her people, they literally, their $5,000 sat there until we can get a 60-day letter done. And yeah, it's terrible, horrible situation. But can't be released until all parties have agreed or there's a court order. That's why you go to small claims. The judge can understand that paragraph super easily, and they will say, "You dumbass, give them the $2,000." All right. The following, this gets confusing. The financing, these lines right here, this is kind of confusing. In our scenario, we're doing conventional financing with a cash down payment of 20%. If you're doing a FHA at 3.5%, a conventional 3%, conventional 5%, conventional 20%, just use the percentage here. Don't put a dollar amount here. So that percentage that will stay solid even if this changes up here. So use the percentage. Now, what is cash? Is money in a trust fund cash?
No.
No. Is money in your TD Ameritrade account cash?
Is it available or is it in a IRA?
It depends. What if you've got $30,000 in GameStop?
No.
So yeah. So you gotta put something here. If you put that they have 20%, if you put that they have 20% right there, read lines 52. Anybody want to read that to me? Greg, you're up front.
Money deposit is refund
Right.
the acquisition by buyer of earnest money deposit, cash, equity line, gift, or other source of funds noted on lines 41, 44, and 45 above, not contingency.
It's not a contingency. If you put that they've got 20% in their GameStop stock, I don't know what it's at now. What is it? 500 when I looked early this morning, it dropped to like 100, 150. What is it now?
Like 122 or something?
It's down to 122 now.
I think so, yeah.
Wow, what a roll. That's a crazy story, y'all. Appreciate it. Anyway, so this has to, and here's another scenario. If, let's say they're using the down payment as the equity in their existing home. This is a true story too. Don't put equity line for equity in existing home. Equity line is money. It's like a second mortgage on your house. Okay. What you're going to do if you're going to put the check mark here, because again, it's not cash. It's equity in your home. It'll be converted to cash if your home closes, but it's not cash right now. So put the check mark here and put equity in existing home and put 20% or whatever it is. But here's what you have to remember. This happened last year. They listed their house for sale, expecting to sell it for a certain amount to have 20% down. Well, the house sold for less. So they didn't get enough to meet the 20%. So the agent calls me and says, "Hey, my buyers, their house sold for less. Can they get out of it?" I said, "No, read line 52 and 53. Whatever you put here, it's not a contingency. If you say that it's they got $2,000, they don't, it's not a contingency. If you say they got 20% and they don't, it's not a contingency. Be very, very careful here. The remaining financing shall be financed by, in this case, conventional loan, fixed rate, NA, it's not an adjustable rate, financed over 30 years with interest not to exceed blank. Get a real interest rate from your lender here, guys, because that is a contingency. If something happens and you put 3% and something happens and they can't get the loan for under 3.5 because of something that popped up on their credit, that's a contingency. Okay, that will potentially let them out. Now the sellers can buy the interest rate back down to 3% or whatever it is, but don't just pull a number out of your head here. Get them pre-approved, find out what the mortgage rate or what the lender's rate is, and put something fairly accurate. See what else? So many things. A gift. If you're doing a gift for down payment, you need to talk to the lender because every mommy, daddy are giving the money. There could be tax consequences. So you need to find that out. The lenders may want the money in the account for a certain number of days. Talk to the lender, find out. But make sure that you know where it's coming from. I had a situation. I sold a house to, let's pick a name at random, Johnny. And Johnny's daddy, I was dumb agent, and I put cash right there, 20% down. They didn't want to pay PMI, so got Johnny under contract. And a cute little Cape Cod in St. Matthews, his dad was going to pay the down payment. Well, 2 weeks before closing, what happened to Johnny? Meg, remember?
No, sorry, I'm reading this statement.
Johnny got a DUI 2 weeks before closing. What happened to Daddy's 20%?
Went to the court.
But right.
Attorney fees. So, yes, make sure the cash actually belongs to your buyer. And if it's a gift, quick gift, and talk to the lender and see how they want to handle it. Any questions about this before we move on?
I have a question.
Yeah, Brad, I have a question.
Okay, whoever, go first. Whoever's on Zoom, go first. And then I'll go back. Go ahead.
So you said that them having the 20%, not having the 20% doesn't validate them getting out of the contract. But what if they don't have the 20% by the time they close for whatever reason, and then they lose out on their financing? Can they still get out?
Okay.
Because they didn't have the 20% to put down, and that was the contingency on their financing?
No, if they don't, if they say they have the 20% and they don't have the 20%, that is not a contingency to get out of the contract. They may be.
Okay, so,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So if their lender says they don't have 20% anymore, they can't get their financing, that it wouldn't be a financing thing. It would be the fact that they didn't have the 20%. Because I was always told that if they lost out on their financing, they could get out of the contract.
They can, but if they indicate that they have cash equaling 20% and they don't, then they have committed fraud,
Okay.
whether they're denied lending or not. I mean, if they indicated on paragraph 1 or 2 or 3, I'm sorry, if you write and they tell you we're in mediation right now for a very similar thing. The buyers told the agent they were putting $300,000 down. Well, then they changed the terms of the loan, and I forget what they changed something, didn't notify the agent, and the lender declined the loan. So we sent over a termination. The seller said, "No way, I'm not terminating this thing." And that's why the attorney said we were negligent in our duty to explain to the buyer that they were supposed to notify, that we were supposed to notify the seller of any change in financing terms or lenders. That's what the lawyer's saying, why we're liable for this $30,000. We don't know what's going to be the outcome of this yet, but that's what we're dealing with. But if you put, the agent puts, buyer says they have 20% of 200,000, means they have $40,000 cash sitting somewhere. That cash goes away, it is not a contingency. Their lending may go away. I don't know. Again, you may end up in a similar situation to what we're dealing with now. But if you indicate that you have this stuff and you don't, then you have breached the contract. Per the contract. Yes.
What I was reading, the part about the acquisition of buyer earnest money, blah, blah, blah.
Huh?
The earnest money piece has to be tripped out.
Well, if you say they've got $2,000 and they don't, then they breach the contract.
Okay.
You've got 3 days to get the earnest
Right.
money.
Yeah.
And
I guess I'm just trying to think about how that would play out.
well, because a lot of times they have buyer's remorse. They get a house under contract. They call you the next day. You know what? We don't want it. You have not acquired the $2,000.
Correct.
Okay? Because they haven't given it to you. Think you're going to write a check for $2,000 for a house they don't want?
No, I've had that as a buyer. But kind of decide, if you're the selling agent though, you're just kind of asking, well, you're not gonna go after $50,000, are you?
Well, you may go after him for 30,000, which has happened to us. It's a lot more than just the earnest money. You breach a contract, the seller's gonna go after the commission, the listing agent's gonna go after commissions. Any change in the purchase price, you had it at 200,000, it sells for 190, so there's another $10,000 you're gonna add onto it, plus attorney's fee.
If you're the buyer's agent though, how do you protect yourself from that? If someone
You
tells
have
they
them have their checkbook with them at
Doesn't
all
mean it's
times.
doesn't mean it's gonna cash, I mean,
Well, if they write a cold check, that is a felony for that amount. I'm not sure what the amounts are on checks
so
now.
if they're using their money from the down payment, when you receive where you said to put that on here, like that's where they're,
Well, right
from the
here.
sale of their house. it's
Yeah,
not-
you're gonna put on line line 45, you're gonna put other.
Okay.
Equity in existing home, and you're gonna put 20% here instead of here.
But then you have to say that it's from the sale of that home.
What's that?
You have to say that it's gonna be from the sale, but then it's continue. Because if their house is for sale,
That's exactly right. If you put equity in existing home. So if it doesn't sell, yes. Any other questions before we move on? There's some stuff now that's playing out in different mediations within the office that I'm not 100% sure how this stuff is going to play out. So I will keep you posted.
Brad, if the seller chooses to go after the buyer, do they have the right to go through this process of the buyer sends a release, the seller says, no, we're not going to sign it, and we're coming after you. Can they put their house on the market immediately?
Yes, because the listing agent's responsibility is to mitigate the loss of the seller.
Okay.
If the buyer's indicated in writing, listening to termination, that they're not proceeding, then the listing agent's responsibility to get the house on the market as quickly back on the market.
So you put their house back on the market, it sells for $20,000 less, they can go after that 20,000 plus any losses along the way. Okay.
Plus commission.
And-
We had an agent not too long ago that earned first party default, first buyer defaulted, they sued him. And they got the commission on that one, then they sold it again, they got 2 commissions on the same property. Because the buyer number 1 defaulted.
That's me again, just if you're curious.
Oh, my gosh. A change on the contract this year. The initials, date, and times were rearranged here. It used to be initial, date, time. Now it's initial, date, time. Okay? I forgot to put a 3 in there. Buyer must have put apply for a loan within blank days. Then you put the lender's contact information in here. Let's see what my notes. Let me check my notes here. If you should always, the earnest money you should always ask for it to be held in our account. Like Whitney's situation, if it was held in their escrow account, which used to be the norm back when Meg and I got the business, we always held it in the listing agent's account, but we changed that. We made it a new thing. We have some control. If you're holding the good faith money, the broker can issue a 60-day letter, which means they have 60 days to file a lawsuit, sign a termination, or blah, blah, blah. If this is held in whoever's escrow account, the only thing you can do is go to small claims court if it's under $2,500. And again, a lot of these companies nowadays, some of these companies are asking you to asking you to hold the escrow funds in title companies account. Don't do that, guys. As a broker, I'm held to certain laws, real estate laws that apply to real estate brokers. Title company does not operate under the same constraints. So if they have a company that sends them 300-400 closings a year, your buyer defaults, or they could release that money to whoever they choose to release it to, because they're not held to the same standards that I am. So if somebody says it's going to be held in whoever title company, you say no, we're going to hold it at our office. That could be a big thing. If it's a VA loan, you're gonna put the amount of the termite inspection right there. What is the termite inspection, $60, $75? How much? 75 has gone up, so put 75 right there. In the event that any legal action is required as a result of buyer or seller's refusal to release the good faith deposit, this is why Whitney now are kind of hoping that we would have to go to court with these jerks, because it says that you can recover triple damages, 3 times the deposit amount. In Whitney's case, that would have been $15,000 if those jerks would have had to pay. So anyway, so if your seller's mad and refuses to sign the termination, just remind them, hey guys, I know you're upset, but that $2,000, you don't want that to turn into $6,000. So let's go ahead and sign it, get your house back on the market, ASAP, and move on. If it's a legitimate termination, now if they breach, then no, don't. But if it's a legitimate termination, then encourage your people to sign it. Any questions there? Okay. If this is what we're dealing with now, any change in financing terms or lender, you must notify the seller. You must notify the other agent. Okay. In our situation, we didn't notify them and are going after us for $30,000. If you say that they're going to apply, let's say you have your offer. You say you have your buyers are under contract, and you wrote 3 days in here, must apply for a loan in 3 days. The listing agent calls you on day 5 and says, yeah, your people applied for the loan, or even they may have called the lender and said, hey, has so-and-so applied for the loan on Waldo Beach Road? Lender goes, no, nobody's applied. Well, guess what? They breached the contract. And at that point, they haven't applied for the loan. The seller has 3 options. They can grant a written extension of time. They can void the contract, retain the earnest money as liquidated damages, or pursue a claim for damages as a result of the breach. Again, this is very important to make sure your buyers understand this. Any change in financing terms or lender must not adversely affect the seller's proceeds or the closing date. Seller shall be informed of the progress of the loan, including any change to the above financing terms or selected lender. That's very, very important. Maybe becoming more important. Time will tell. So tell your buyers. Number one, you guys need to be on the phone with whoever you guys don't let your buyers use Quicken Loans. We had 3 deals depending on the first closing. We had the listing. Unfortunately, we took a contract where the buyers using Quicken Loans. 45 days in, Quicken Loans denied the loan after they'd already issued a clear to close. And we will no longer accept financing on our listing, Quicken Loans or Rocket Mortgage. Yeah. Period. They pre-approved people that shouldn't. We sent them to Elaine, even though they weren't our buyers. We sent them to Elaine. Elaine ran the numbers. Said these people should have never been pre-approved in the first place. They had a bankruptcy less than 2 years. I mean, Quicken Loans approved somebody that had a bankruptcy less than 2 years ago. I mean, it's crazy. So, and if you have a buyer that wants to use Quicken Loans, unless they have like an 850 credit score and that income ratio is 0, I mean, just beware. You call up there and you're going to talk to 10 different people over the course of the time period of the transaction. What you should do if you're a buyer, you need to be in contact with your lender every few days to make sure that the buyers are giving them all the information that they need. Because lenders, I applied for a mortgage on Monday, and every day she's asked for something more additional that she didn't ask for the day before. So you need to stay on top of your lender, find out if your buyers are providing all the necessary documents. Because if they don't, a lot of buyers drag their feet and don't provide the documents. they don't provide the documents there, again, you could be accused of not acting in good faith. The buyer could be accused of not acting in good faith. You want to keep in touch with this lender. If the lender tells you, oh, they switched to, you're not using me, well, at that point, you've got to notify the seller. And if it delays the closing or it costs the seller more money, then the seller can say no. You don't have to get permission from the seller unless you have to notify them. But you do not have to get permission to change the terms for a lender unless it adversely affects proceeds or the closing. Does that make sense? See people on that stupid GLAR bitch group, whatever it's called. And that broker. Oh yeah, anytime all this has to be, the seller has to approve change. I don't ever get on that group because there's a bunch of moaning, crazy, whatever. Anyway, I don't like that group. But the broker said, oh yeah, you have to get the seller's permission to change loan or change loan product. No, you don't. You have to notify the seller. And only time you have to get permission is if it changes proceeds or the closing. Okay. What's that?
If it doesn't change the proceeds or it doesn't change the closing date, they don't actually have time.
No, which is not unless it changes proceeds or the closing. Any questions about the first 5 paragraphs of this contract were 90% of the, well, except for paragraph 10, or where 90% of the problems come up. So I know this is a long class and you guys get tired. If you don't understand something, ask me. Whitney, you still there?
I'm here.
Good. Now we get to talk about your deal. There's another one. Okay, Whitney had a house under contract for 375.
It was 359 under contract for. It was listed for 375. We were under contract for 359.
375. She had under contract for 359. Okay, what paragraph 4, sir? That's the appraisal contingency. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And it's in that appraisal contingency says, should the appraisal establish that the value of the property is less than the purchase price, 359.9. In order for the contingencies for in A or B above to be effective, the buyer must do this. What are the contingencies? The contract's contingent upon the lender's first appraisal establishing that the value of the property is equal to or greater than the purchase price. So Whitney's appraiser had to appraise her buyer's potential property at 359.9. Right, Whitney?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the appraisal came back. And was it 305? What was it, 305?
Yeah.
Came back at 305. So, at that point, Whitney's buyer had 3 options. And she had to do one of these 3 options within 5 days of discovering that the appraisal came in low. And the 3 options are waive the appraisal contingency, which means they would have had to have brought $55,000 in cash additional to the closing, agree with the seller on a new purchase price and or payment terms if necessary to close, which Whitney's buyers offered to pay what, $340 for the house?
Yeah, 340.
Yeah, which kind of cut it in the middle. Or they could just terminate the contract. In Whitney's case, she notified the listing agent within like the same day she found out.
Yeah.
Okay. And he went off, called her every name, probably some names that haven't been invented yet. This guy went off on her.
Yeah, he got creative.
What's that?
He got creative with his vocabulary.
Yeah. And so that she notified him that he came in at 305. He went off on her and said, no. And I'm not going to repeat what all he said to her, what he called her. I'll tell you what he said to me when I talked to him. So he said, no, we're not selling for 305. You're crazy. This appraiser doesn't know what the hell they're doing. And Whitney went back to her people and said, okay, we'll pay 340 for it. Okay. So far, she's done everything right. And that's option number B, agree on a new purchase price. Whitney did that right. The agent came back and started yelling at her again and telling her that the appraiser was an idiot, that he was gonna file a code of ethics complaint against the appraiser and called her every name in the book, told her to F off and everything else and hung up with her. So am I right so far, Whitney?
Yeah.
Okay, then he
Yeah.
called me to the wedding on Saturday. He tried to call me on Saturday, and I didn't answer during the wedding. He called me back that Monday morning, and he said, "Hey man, how you doing?" I said, "Doing great." He goes, "Yeah, we got this horrible appraisal we're dealing with. We're going to contest that." I said, "No, we're not going to contest it because we followed our options that were available to us in paragraph 4. No, you can't do that. We're going to contest this appraisal. Blah, 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 blah. I'm very sorry, but we have followed the buyer is within the contractual rights to terminate. And then he goes, "How long have we known each other?" And I said, I don't remember.
Too long.
I'm not going to say anything. We've known each other for 15 years. And, this is crazy. I said, we're not, I said, read paragraph 4. Whitney has done everything according to the residential sales contract. And he goes, "You know what? You're a dick." And then he slammed the phone
Oh my
on
God.
me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Whitney, that's what I love when you're in class, because you can confirm everything I say about it.
Brad, that's why I attend all these classes, because you'd have no examples if it weren't for me. I mean, I think I've been using the last 2 of the 3 examples for what could go wrong.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, he did tell me, like, the very first day when I notified him and I called him and said, "Look, it didn't appraise. My people are going to come up a little bit." And he said, "You have to allow me to bring in the third party." And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Yes, you do." And he was trying to bully me into allowing him to have a third party come in, which he is also a licensed appraiser. So he was going to be the third party appraising it.
And another caveat of this paragraph, let's say the appraisal, let's say our $200,000 example here appraises at 190, and the sellers agree to lower it to 190, the buyer can still terminate the contract, even if the seller lowers the price to the appraisal. Because what's it say? What's option number 6? If the
Must appraise for the
price,
first appraisal.
option C, void the contract. Even if the seller says they're going to lower the price, the buyer can still terminate. A lot of agents don't understand that, y'all. So you're going to have to educate them. All right, prorations. Talks about taxes and HOA dues and all that stuff, condo dues, prorated for the period of time that each party owns the house. Home warranties. Home membership now is $590 for their warranty. Make sure to check all these boxes. Make sure you guys every 30, if there's a check box on any of these 32 paragraphs in here, how many ever there are, make sure to put something there if it's applicable. Except the one that says waiting owner's title. Don't put a check mark there. So this is where you're asking the seller to buy a home warranty for the buyer, and kind of educate your buyers that home warranties are a Band-Aid, but they are not like a new home warranty. They're not going to cover everything. You're buying a used house. It may help out a little bit, but when you're buying a used house, you should warn your buyers that unexpected expenses come up, because people, when something goes wrong with the house, 6 months after they bought it, who do they call? Yeah, they expect you guys to fix everything. And you know what? You're buying a used house, bottom line. And there may be issues that come up. Because issues always come up. So what happened the last 2 days before it
Rain.
rained, it snowed, rain. So how many basement leak calls did I get over the last 3 days?
We have one, I just emailed you about,
You emailed me when?
like when I was sitting here.
No, I haven't checked either. Sorry.
But,
Don't, I can't fix it.
No, we can't fix it either, but in the contract, when we're done and we're closed. We're closed,
Close. That means it's no longer your responsibility
we're closed.
unless you did something wrong.
No,
That's why there's mediation and arbitration.
yeah, we told her good luck. We told her we're sorry. I mean, no, that's up.
No, it
I feel for it, but
happens every day, y'all.
it's a basement, it's going to leak.
It happens every day. And as long as they remember your names,
Mhm.
they're gonna call you when it happens. And, but if you try to let folks when you buy a used car and the alternator goes out, you call the person at Viking Chevrolet or wherever you bought it to fix your alternator. No, you bought a used car. Things happen. Buying a used house, things happen. The warranty is a Band-Aid that may or may not help. So just let them know, let them read the home warranty. It covers some things, it doesn't cover everything. Read through whatever company you use, give them the brochure and have them read it. Alrighty. Seller's disclosure of property condition. You can go through that and have your buyers review it. They're going to initial all 5 pages and sign it on page 5. Have them read it closely. It may mention the basement leaking on the disclosure, or it may not. If it was on the disclosure that the basement had leaked, and it leaks yesterday, the seller did their duty. They told them it leaks. Like my basement leaks. When we get torrential rainfall, sometimes I get a little trickle in my basement. So if I ever sell my house, I'm going to put the basement has leaked during very heavy rainfall. Had it, you're better to over disclose. So anyway, so they got the seller's disclosure. If the seller's disclosure is not online, they don't have it, then the seller has 72 hours to provide it to you, and your buyer has 24 hours to review it. If they see something on there they don't like, they can terminate the contract. So as a listing agent, always get your seller's disclosure up as soon as possible. Okay. Lead paint, it was either, if it was built after 78, check A and then move on. If it was built before 78, check B, and then you have options. You're either going to waive the right to conduct a risk assessment, or it's contingent upon a risk assessment that will be done within 10 days or how many every days you write it. There's a pamphlet you're supposed to hand out to all of your buyers. So it's called EPA, CPA pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. Make sure your buyers get that. It should be in all the buyer packs out there by the copy machine. If you don't use that, you can email it to them. Just make sure that they get it. All righty, here we get to the fun one, paragraph 10. Remember we talked about what time is of the essence means? This is the biggie. Time is of the essence with regard to all of paragraph 10. That means if something doesn't happen on a specific date and time, then it's done and over with. If you miss your inspection deadline, why we went over that calendar early on. If you miss that inspection deadline, you're in deep doo-doo. So don't miss those deadlines. This is a bunch of legal boilerplate. I'll let you guys read. Says you're responsible for damaging the home and so forth when you do an inspection. The inspector's responsible. Okay, you've got 15 days now to verify the square footage is within 10% of what they state. Again, most people when they buy a house are not overly concerned. I am only buying a 10,000 square foot house. If a house comes on the market, it's 9,500 square feet. I think most people, when they look at houses, they go in the house, walk around. Does it have the number of bedrooms they want? Does it have the number of bathrooms they want? Does it have whatever they want? If it does, I don't think they're overly concerned about square footage. Would you agree, Scott? Yes. But if you do have somebody you have an engineer that wants that damn square footage within,
Yes.
you've got a 10% mistake rate if you're listing it. But if you want to measure it, you have to do it within 15 days, or
put in paragraph 28, that the seller will have the house measured within how many everything. I've got a surveyor that goes out and measures houses for, not a surveyor, an appraiser that will measure houses for me for like between 75 and 95 dollars. He does it pretty quick. Again, most buyers don't really care as long as the house fits their needs, but you need to talk to them about it. All right. Paragraph 10B. This is your get out of jail free card if you have a buyer that changes their mind. Now, I've heard some rumblings that a lot of agents are waiving inspection in order to get out. All I can say, if you're encouraging your buyers not to do a home inspection, you are opening yourself up to a major issue. I heard that one agent was doing this, and I went back to that loop and looked at her contracts she had written over the past 8 months. About 8 of the 10 had waived the inspection. And I seriously doubt that the buyers decided that on their own. So it's pretty much a straight path to trouble if you do that. You encourage. I mean, there's so many things that come up in home inspection. Crawl space, $30,000 crawl space repairs, basements. I mean, septic system. I mean, all the millions of things that come up. If you encourage your people to do this, get the house under contract, all I can say is, you know what? You're on your own. I warned you, told you not to do it. If they insist upon doing it. Now, the only time I'd really recommend using this, if you're representing an investor client that understands the risk, that can go through a house, look at it themselves, and be cognizant of potential downfall. Now, that may be one thing. This is dangerous right here. This one used to give you the right to do an inspection just for informational purposes only. Now you can't even do an inspection, period. So be very, very careful. Don't do it unless your buyer comes out and tells you, I don't want a home inspection. I'm not going to do a home inspection. I want this house. I don't care what's wrong with it. I'm not going to do a home inspection. Well, then if they do that, I would have them sign a document saying, against my agent's advice, I've decided to purchase this house without doing a home inspection. Have them sign and notarize it. So that's how serious it is. So 99% of the time, you're going to use 10B2. That's what we talked about. You hear me say paragraph 10B2, 10B2, 10B2. That's you're going to have a deal free card. So I'll show your inspection period, and we're going to go over it. And I use 10 days because that's a fairly standard number. It doesn't have to be 10 days. It could be 12 days, 14 days, whatever. But if you're buying a house that you know is going to need additional evaluation, whether it's roof, HVAC, you just know that. You might want to give yourself a little extra time here to line those people up so you don't have to ask for an extension. Because the seller is not required to extend this inspection period. Keep in mind, guys, houses are getting 11 to 15, 20 offers on in a day. If you don't want it, guess what? Somebody else will. So if they got a backup offer, $10,000 more than yours, and you want an inspection extension, chances are they're going to say no. So give yourself enough time to do what you want to do. And so the way this reads, within 10 days, you're going to do all of your inspection, everything. That includes getting things further evaluated. Everything has to be done by midnight on day 10. Okay. At that point, you can either accept the property as is, ask for repairs, replacements, or corrections, or terminate the contract. Get out of jail free. Those are the 3 options. They must be done within this, whatever, midnight on day 10. Okay, but let's say they submit a repair request. Well, the next box means that the seller, you submit a repair request on whatever day here, the seller then has 2 days from that day to respond to your repair request. So some people ask me, what if they send over the repair request on day 6? Does that mean the seller has 6 days to respond? No. The 2 days starts whenever you send it over. That could be on day 2 or day 10. So it doesn't matter when you send over the repair request. this is how many days the seller has to respond. And when do the days start? The day after you send it. So you send it today at 4 o'clock, the repair request. The 2 days, what is tomorrow? Friday? Midnight, Saturday night, midnight, in that case would be the deadline. Everybody got that crystal clear? Okay, then, at that point, if the seller says, yes, we'll do everything, and signs off on it, then you're good to go. But they may say, we'll do items 1 through 8, but we're not gonna do items 10 and 8, or 9 and 10. Then they counter back on your response. They then have to, your buyer then has 2 days to respond back to the seller. With me so far? All right. It keeps going back and forth into whatever you write in there, 2, 3, whatever you write in there. It keeps going back and forth in those increments until you come to an agreement on repair. Unless the third thing here is the last, best, and final thing. If you go back and forth, that's the reason I do 10, 2, 2, and 1. If you're going back and forth 5 or 6 times on a repair request, you're going to be ready to get it over with at some point. So if you send over last, best, and final, don't put 3 days in. I get offers all the time with 3 days right there. Don't do that. I put 1 day in. It's either they're going to do it or they're not. But you can't send over if the seller responds to you in the time frame there, and they say they're going to do half the repairs you asked for, buyer cannot terminate the contract at that point. Neither party can terminate the contract until they do a last, best, and final. At that point, they have whichever party was issued the last, best, and final, they have 1 day to either do it or it's dead. You with me? At any time, the seller does not respond to the buyer's request, the buyer may terminate the contract. If on day 3 comes and the seller hasn't responded, the buyer can terminate the contract.
Is there a time, like once they say within those 2 days, okay, I'm gonna do this, do they have a certain time to get it done?
Well, we'll get into that with the repair request, because what we do is we create a repair request, and you say all electrical items to be repaired by a licensed electrician, anything other than replacing the cover on the electrical box. Plumbing items by a licensed plumber, like HVAC guy, so forth and so on.
Okay.
Not all trades are licensed. It has to be done prior to closing. We always ask for receipts 3 days prior to closing. And then we do a final walkthrough, hopefully with the receipts in the end, and see that everything's done, and we move on. Many times things are not done. What happens if things are not done?
You should not close.
Do not close. Because they won't get done if you close. Unless you can convince them to escrow the money.
And Lord, that takes longer.
So, my advice is if it's not done, don't close. All right. Anything that you don't understand about that paragraph? Anything at all? Again, you can't. Neither party can terminate until either the buyer can terminate if the seller doesn't respond, but the seller can't terminate if the buyer doesn't respond. The only way, if you're still going back and forth, neither party can terminate until there's been a last, best, and final response regarding the sales issue. All righty, we good there? Okay, we're on paragraph 10, and the rest of the stuff is pretty darn easy. We spent 2 hours on the first 10 paragraphs, and then it gets pretty easy. Survey. It's contingent upon a survey. It's the buyer's sole satisfaction with that survey. If they do a survey and the buyer's not happy with it, they can terminate. It says this contract is contingent upon a survey at buyer's expense, satisfactory to buyer, then blank days. We talked about early on. Don't put anything in there until you have a surveyor that can actually go out and get it done within whatever you write in there. Again, 4 that I talked to a few few weeks ago, we're 2 months out. So find out what to put there. And if you've got a 30-day contract and a 60-day survey, I'm not sure what to tell you. So you need to find out if you can get one done. Seems if I were a young person looking for a job, I'd probably go to surveyor school. Closing timeframe. The best thing to do is put a specific date. Get with a good lender that you trust, not Quicken Loans or Rocket Mortgage, and pick a date. Go out a month. Elaine, when should we put for the close? Can you get this done in 30 days? Sure, Brad, I can get it done in 30 days. So say, well, you want to close on Friday the 26th or whatever the heck 26th is. Just talk to your buyer and find out what's a good day for them to close. What's convenient. And then talk to the seller. Talk to, what's good for the seller? Again, you want to cooperate. They say cooperating, says cooperating agent. That means the agent on the other side. Unfortunately, a lot of the agents are uncooperative. So you want to always try to be cognizant and aware of the needs of the other party, so that you will be a good agent. And I'm going to skip back to before we even write up this offer. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like almost every offer my team deals with now is a multiple. Almost everything. And we win a pretty good percentage of them. But what are the strategies to winning multiple offer situations?
Escalation clause.
No, that may work. You want to be the agent that the other agent wants to work with. Okay, you're going to kiss that agent's butt. You're going to tell them, you know what, I'm going to be great, whatever. Just make them love you. Tell them you're going to. We have won offers because my agent outniced the other agents that they were up against. We got one for $2,000 less than another offer because the listing agent wanted to work with Lisa on my team. So outnice them. Call them. Hey, what's important to your buyer? Is it all about price? I mean, we called one agent the other day. All I didn't care about is price. He was grumpy.
I called one that said, we aren't even looking at escalation clause.
Yeah, not everybody will look at it. So a lot of agents don't understand or don't want to do it. Yep. So out nice the other agents and you'll win more offers.
You hear that, Whitney? Be nice.
Scott, we'll talk about this later.
So out nice them and win the deal. Because if you don't get it under contract, all the stuff we're going over doesn't matter. So you got to get there before you can get here. So it's best to pick a day if you can. If it's a vacant property, you can put whatever you want in there, 30 to 45 days, because the sellers don't have to move out. They've already moved out. We're the World War III. Where people try to get me involved and try to get me to solve it is they put 30 to 45 days in there, and their lender's ready to go in 30 days. But the seller, when they saw this, they saw 45 days. So 30 days here and 45 days here. And the seller thinks, oh, I've got 45 days to get out. You call them on day 28, hey, we're closing in 2 days. And the listing agent goes, what? She calls her seller, I don't have to be out until 45th day. And contract reads, the buyer and seller cannot mutually agree on a closing date. They both agree to close on the last business day of the range above. That changed 2 years ago. Anybody hadn't moved in the last 2 years ago? That changed. Now it's the last business day of the time frame written on line, whatever that is, 205. So if it says 30 to 45 days here, they can't agree, it's going to close on day 45. If day 45 is a Sunday, it's going to close on day 43. So be careful there. Make sure that, talk to the listing agent. Say, hey, again, I really recommend putting a date on an occupied house. That way everybody's working toward the same goal, especially the lenders. Lenders see it 45 days there. They're going to push yours on the bottom of the stack. They're going to work on the ones that are more time sensitive. So that's my strong advice right there. Put a specific date. Again, unless it's vacant. If it's vacant and clean, then it doesn't matter. And then you want to try for simultaneous closing right here, if at all possible. If you do a delayed closing, you gotta be really careful.
Delayed possession.
No, delayed
Delayed closing.
delayed possession. If you do a delayed possession, you're gonna do a final walkthrough, but guess what? All their stuff's still in the house. So how are you gonna verify that it's the way it's supposed to be? Because they got 5 days after closing to live there.
Don't do it. It's a nightmare.
Don't do it. Was that Heather? Don't do it unless you absolutely have to. If it takes that to win the offer, then do it. But try to escrow. Here's the one that we walked in. This was one that happened to my team a couple of years ago. This was a 5-day delayed possession. And when our buyers walked in the house, this is what they were left with.
That is not Bruce West.
So we didn't escrow any money. We did not do a delayed possession agreement. What did we do?
You bought a dumpster for your buyer.
No, I called my junk guy and said, Tommy, I need you, brother. Can you come haul out a bunch of stuff? So the agent on my team and I split the $1,000 it cost to clean all this junk up. We could have avoided that if he should have seen this stuff. He should have seen this and anticipated the problem. But we always hope for the best, but we're not prepared for the worst. So prepare for the worst. And in a situation like this, say, hey, this house has a lot of junk in it. We'll give you a delayed possession. However, we're going to escrow $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, whatever the case may be.
When you say escrow, Brad,
Yes.
are you actually putting it at, I know you close Borders a lot. Are you keeping it at Borders, or are you just keeping it at one of the brokerages as far as?
No, Harry will hold it for you.
Yeah, I know. That's what my question was. You're holding it at Harry's? Yes. Okay.
I like to hold it. I don't want to. I don't want to hold it. I prefer for an attorney to hold it.
So
Yes.
you said in this situation, you all didn't have it
He didn't do
delayed?
anything. He hoped for the best and was not prepared for the worst. Well, the worst happened, so that's when you have to start writing checks. You think, are you gonna let your buyer, you're gonna leave it up to your buyer to clean this stuff out? Not if you want any referrals. Not if you want, well, I worked with Jennifer Downs, and she sold me a house that was posted on Facebook, Google, every review place they can. Jennifer Downs sold me a house. We moved in, and it was full of junk, and they put that picture on Facebook. Is that what you want? No, you're gonna call your junk guy, and you're gonna write a check to get it done. But what you should have done was say, hey, this could be a problem, so blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
The escrow, and I think you would have escrowed money. Was that part of, or would that have been part of the situation?
Yes, the delayed possession agreement, which is in your materials, has a place for escrow funds. The first time you do one or plan on doing one, just come see me. Because again, both sides have to agree to this. You can't have a unilateral, it has to be a bilateral contract. Buyer and seller have to both agree to escrow funds. Condition of possession is supposed to be what? Groomed clean. You're gonna do a final walkthrough, and what happens if it's something's not right fixed or if something's gone that was supposed to be there? What happens?
Don't close.
Don't close. Any warranties in effect will transfer to the buyer. The big one there is basement waterproof warranties in Louisville. And sometimes there's a charge to transfer. So if there's a charge to transfer any warranty, it's the responsibility of the buyer to pay. It says you're gonna Says you're gonna convey a clean title. But title searches only go back, what, 35, 40 years, I don't even know. Things can happen before that. So you always want your buyer to buy owner's title insurance. So never have, I said check all check boxes. Don't ever have them check this checkbox unless they specifically told you. I've only had I think I've had one buyer in my last 18 years that told me flat out he did not want owner's title insurance.
Can't they repossess your home?
Wait, oh yeah, yeah, it's happened many times. A true story. I used to live in Bowling Green before I moved back home, and a guy moved from Louisville to Bowling Green, retired down there, spent $300,000 in the '90s building a house, retirement house, and this cash transaction did not buy owner's title insurance. Well, all of a sudden, he started getting noticed of all these liens. The general contractor that he used didn't pay any of the subcontractors. So he he had to sell that house, pay off all these claims. It's a pretty ugly story. Jefferson County requires smoke detectors be hardwired or replaced with new ones that have 10-year lithium batteries. You have to sign an affidavit at closing stating that. The seller has to sign it. And if you guys don't get that, Jefferson County House, and you don't get that document signed, we can't pay you your commission. And if you close anywhere outside of Jefferson County, they send in a notary to do your closing. Anything other than one of the major title companies here in Louisville, you need to keep a copy of that smoke detector ordinance with you all the time. And if it's a notary closing it, you're gonna, Mr. Notary, Jefferson County, Kentucky has an ordinance. This has to be signed stating they've done that. They won't do it. And I've had commissions sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks because it wasn't signed at closing. So please get it signed. If it's a condo, it's a condo seller certificate is required. That's a Kentucky state law as well. This is a Jefferson County ordinance, which means it's a law in Jefferson County. This is a state statute, KRS 381.9203. And it must be completed before transferring a condominium in Kentucky. And usually there's a cost involved in completing that. It's usually up to 250. I think Lloyd charges $250. That's the responsibility of the seller. Many times lenders will require additional documentation. It's called a lender condo information sheet. If your lender requires another document over and above this, it's the buyer's responsibility to pay for that, or the lender or whoever. Seller, they have exposure for this condo seller certificate, but anything else is your buyer's responsibility. Risk of loss. Get homeowners insurance in place. True story. Where this is if there's a mortgage involved, they won't close it unless they approve of insurance. If it's a cash transaction, it's up to you. It's up to your buyer to get the homeowner's insurance, but it's really up to you. You need to remind them. So I have this little old lady that keeps buying condos because she gets tired of them every couple of years. So I get to list her old one and sell her new one every 2 years. I think I've sold her 5 now. The last one, we were sitting there at Borders and we hadn't signed the deed yet. They're all cash. And I said, Donna, if you could set up your insurance for this place. Oh my God. Yeah. I said, stopped the closing until she went out in the lobby, called her insurance man. He got insurance. Got an insurance writer in place. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't remembered that, and she had driven to her new to her condo, and it burned down, she would have been out $200,000. She would not have had insurance. So that's a big, big, big responsibility for you guys on cash transaction. Of course, of course, they say, well, this buyer's initial down here. Okay, but now the attorneys are coming back to us and saying, oh, they initial down there, but you didn't adequately explain it to them. Seriously, this is what's happening now, you guys. Every year this business gets tougher. Lawyers find more ways to get money out of it. This is the latest and greatest. Again, we live in a world of transaction desk and dot loop and command where you send over 15 pages for them to sign. Chances are they don't read a single word of it. So maybe this lawyer's right. Maybe we need to do a better job explaining this stuff. I'm beginning to think so. Additional disclosures. This means that the consumer's guide, the agency disclosure, blah, 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 you need to get that signed. Commission is earned at acceptance. That's why the people get paid double commission sometimes. Buyer breaches, they get one commission, they resell it, they get another commission. You can really totally double dip on that situation. Notices, this is critical, guys. Don't allow anything verbal to be done. It says 3 different places in the contract. Notices must be in writing and delivered to be legit. Had an agent call me, it's been a couple of years ago. Sunday morning, she called me in tears and she said, Brad, I sold the house yesterday, and the agent called me last night, said that the sellers accepted my offer. I said, fantastic. She goes, well, she called me this morning and she said another offer came in after she called me that was higher than ours, and they accepted that one. She goes, what do I do? What do I do? I said, well, did you tell your people that they were under contract? She goes, yes. Oh. Yeah, like accepted and delivered, accepted and delivered, accepted and delivered. She had a verbal acceptance from another agent. Number one, the agent's not a party to the contract. Agent told her their people were under contract on a Saturday night. And she got a call Sunday morning saying that they weren't under contract. Think those buyers were happy with it? No. So the moral of the story is, until you have it delivered in your hands, you don't have an acceptance. A million things can happen between the time they accept it and sign it and it gets delivered. Please, please, please. Severability, if you sever one paragraph from this contract, all other paragraphs stay in full force and effect. Mediation, binding arbitration is the way we work things out because it's supposed to be cheaper than going to court. But it may be cheaper, but it ain't free, as we talked about earlier. Don't be a dumbass like some of these agents and refuse to sign down here. I've got agents all the time. Unless you're married to an attorney. If you're married to an attorney, you don't sign because he'll represent you free in court. Unless you're an attorney or married to an attorney or your best friend's attorney says he's going to represent you free in court, which I doubt they do. You better sign it. If you don't sign this, you're waiving your right to mediation, binding arbitration. They can take you straight to court. I don't know why some of these agents, I don't know why they do it. Harry doesn't understand why they do it. He just calls them dumbasses. Sign it. If you don't sign it, you waive your right to mediation arbitration. Amendments must be amended or modified by written agreement signed by both seller and buyer. However, they can be signed electronically. Transaction desk.loop, Authentisign, DocuSign. Every day there's another way to sign. So here's where paragraph 28. Here's where you get to practice law without a license. So I'm going to skip to the next page. These are some possible things that you would put in paragraph 28. Closing costs. If your buyer needs closing costs, this is where you would ask for it right here. And they call this seller paid closing costs. That is the stupidest thing in the world. Because it's the seller is not paying the closing. The buyer's financing the closing costs into their mortgage. Because if a house sells, like our example, $200,000 house, you ask for $4,000 in closing costs. What's that $4,000? It comes off the sales price of the house. The seller gets $196 before other expenses, right? Right. But the buyer still got a $200,000 mortgage. It should say buyer finance closing costs. Anyway, I don't know, but just don't think. And lenders love to ask for closing, have you to ask for closing costs. And when you ask for closing costs in this market, you better go in over the list price, at least by the amount of closing costs. You're not going to get the house. So that's where you put the closing costs. It's contingent on closing a buyer's property. It's not contingent on the sale and closing. It's only contingent on the closing. It's contingent on the sale and closing. Then we have to do another form. It's called the contingency of sale and closing. So if it's just contingent on the closing because the house is already under contract, you're going to write this in there. Contract contingent on closing of buyer's property located at blah, 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 which is under contract and scheduled to close on or about whatever. Does that make sense? Now, this is the contingency. You created a contingency here. If their house doesn't close, they don't have to buy it, okay? So that's why a lot of people say, oh, can't you just use the mortgage? If they don't sell their house, you're not going to qualify for the mortgage. Well, then you get into this shaky legal ground, like, well, we're acting in good faith. They didn't tell us they had a house to sell. They were going to put 20% down cash. They didn't put the equity existing home, blah, 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 blah. So I believe in full disclosure. You would put that in paragraph 28.
So as a heavy listing agent, I often would ask for another.
You're not that fast.
Yeah, I am. I would ask for another pre-approval that includes the language of this is, including the buyer does not have to sell their primary residence, or whatever the case may be. If they're trying to buy it, contingent.
Well, this is not contingent. This is only contingent on the close.
Correct, I get that.
Contingent means it hasn't.
I understand. You didn't get to that other part. Did you go to it?
We're not there yet.
Oh, okay. I just saw where you're going down. I thought that would have been the same thing.
This is when it's only contingent on the close.
I got you.
Speaking of that, I put like my 20 pounds up, pick up, about 15 of them back home.
Blame Whitney Brown. Seems easy to do.
Again, always got to be. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
This escalation clause, it's if you want to use it, use it. Some agents won't accept them. Some agents don't understand how to work them. So they get 3 escalation clauses. They call me, how in the heck do I figure this out? It's a mess. Sometimes it's better just to go with your best offer. And a seller doesn't have to accept an escalation clause. When you go in, with a, this is the list price, $274, but you're telling them here that you're willing to pay $279. They don't have to use the escalation clause. They can simply send over a counteroffer. You already told them how much you're willing to pay. They can send over a counteroffer for $279. So see what I'm saying? And when that happens, they've taken the listing, the seller's taken this out of the equation. They just countered you at 279. But this is the verbiage if you want to use it. Again, some agents won't even accept them or don't understand them.
Hey, Brett, can you go back just a half second to where you were? I've also put down as a buyer, not on the escalation clause, keep going down to the contingency. I've also, as a buyer's agent, put other way. Put in there right there. Put in there scheduled to close. I've also added in there past inspection time period as well, you know, like, just to throw more concrete on that deal?
Again, the more,
Is that okay to do?
of course, the stronger you make it, the more chance you have of getting accepted. But most people, usually people, when they sell a house, get their house under contract, they need to find the next one right away, so they don't necessarily have time to. But if it is through, or if you are through with inspections on Main Street in Dallas, yeah, put that in there. If you're an agent, licensed agent, you have to disclose that. It must be in the contract. It can't just be in the agent notes, it has to be in the contract. So the best thing to do is put in your agent notes. Selling agents, please include the following language in paragraph 28. That the buyer's agent, selling agent, the licensed agent in the state of Kentucky. Because if you don't, you're gonna have to send over a counter with that language in there. If you don't disclose your identity as a licensed agent, that can be major issues down the road. If you're in an LLC, if you're buying a house in an LLC, you must, you're selling a house in an LLC, you must disclose that a member of the LLC is a licensed agent in Kentucky. Here is the backup offer language. If you're putting this offer in as a backup offer, all this stuff is in our templates. It's in our office intranet. It's on .loop. It's in Authentisign. You can simply copy and paste. Back to this page here. Okay, there we go. If there's any addendums that are attached to it, you would put right here what they are. And then it says there's no rescission period following the signing of the contract. Remember what it said at the very top of page 1? This is a legally binding contract. Well, again, this has been such a problem that the board, when they changed the form 2 years ago, put it as a separate paragraph, reminding everybody this is a binding contract. You can't just change your mind. So, and then survival clause. Again, that means that if something's not done, it's still enforceable. How do you enforce it? You got to through some sort of legal action. So what happens if something's not done, Scott?
Don't close.
Don't close. All right, and this right here is how much time you're going to give them to accept, counter your offer. Accept, reject, or counter your offer. Again, when you have communication with the listing agent, say, hey, I'd like to get this statement. I'd like to get this. Do you have any other offers? Oh my God, you've got 10 other offers. Well, what would it take for us? What's the most important thing? What do they do? Price, term, possession, like possession, whatever the case may be. But if there's no other offers and you talk to the listing agent, say, I'd really like to get this under contract right away, and they sign electronically, blah, blah, blah. And I've written offers for my team. We put as little as 2 hours in there because they communicated with the other side and they said, yes, we could get 2 hours. Used to be considered an unreasonable time to put in there. But in today's world, it's not. But again, don't put 2 hours in there unless you've had a conversation with the listener. But it's doable. But you want to keep this as tight as possible because the longer that thing sits on the market, the more offers are going to come in. And then this is what you're looking for, an acceptance. And then if you do that, then you move on to your inspection stuff. But if they don't, then it's rejected and they accept a counter offer. Put in a counter offer right here. Now, here's what to remember about counter offer. Don't recreate the other 32 paragraphs in your counter offer. Only put in a counter offer what changes. Okay? If the only thing that's changing is the price, just put sales price to be whatever. Because it says right here, all other terms and conditions shall remain the same. When you start repeating, rehashing everything in the contract, like yes, dollar pay for home inspection. Yes, inspection period to be 10 days. Blah blah blah. If you start rehashing all of a sudden, everything, what if you leave something out? Well, you kind of give the impression to the other side that you've re-summarized all the offer right here. Well, this came back to bite us in the ass, and I don't want it to bite you guys. So only put in here what changes. If it gets to the point where you've gone back, you're on page 12, you've had offer, counteroffer, offer, counteroffer, offer, counteroffer. You may be better off once you agree just to do a brand new contract, 7 pages, everything's agreed on, and go, okay? But again, please remember, the only thing that goes in the counteroffer is what changed from the original offer. Try to recap everything, you're potentially going to make a very costly mistake. Again, all other terms and conditions remain the same. The only thing that changed was price. Everything else is the same as it was before. And then again, you're looking for an acceptance here, blah, blah, blah. All right, we're not going to talk about bill of sale because I'm practicing law without a license. This is an example of the condo seller certificate. Familiarize newer people with this so you'll know what is required. It's more than this form. There's also these documents: the operating budget, insurance summary, rules, bylaws of the association, declarations other than plats and plans. This went into effect in 2011, right after the market crash, because condos lost so much of their value during 2008, 9, 10. Not in Louisville. We had a perfectly healthy condo market here in Louisville. Where it crashed were places like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Miami, and name your resort town. And what happened, of course, they punished us all. They took our very healthy condo market and turned it in. Now, do you remember, Scott, you remember how hard it was to sell a condo back in 2011, 12? Yeah, they made it really, really hard. Lenders wouldn't lend on them. Yeah, it was terrible. Here's a separate issue, an HOA. Like, you guys just bought a house in Glen Oaks, right?
Yep.
You guys have an HOA?
That one,
Yep.
go ahead and tell them about that.
No, yes,
Is there a golf course?
not attached to the HOA,
Is there a swimming pool?
not attached to the HOA.
Okay, so are there dues?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're selling a house in a neighborhood that maybe has, I don't know, a manicured front entrance, boulevard down the middle, beautiful street lights, whatever, all kinds of landscaping, blah, blah, blah. A good chance there's an HOA. So you want your buyer to buy this house, their dream house, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, get a bill for $5,000 and past due HOA dues? No. So my suggestion is to submit this document along with your offer so that they will provide you all of this information. Okay? Does that make sense?
So do we just fill out the top part and then they,
Yeah, you're gonna fill out, you're gonna put the property address, contract dated, blah, blah, blah. The above contract is contingent on the following. Seller shall assist buyer to obtain at buyer's expense, if there's expenses, copy the following information. The, right here, then they're gonna fill out this, who they contact, phone number. Seller is not aware of any pending or this is what really gets buyers, are assessments that weren't disclosed. Okay, I've seen multi-$1,000 assessments that were not disclosed. The seller moves out of state and the buyer gets the bill 6 months down the road, So you don't want that to happen. Jennifer, you fill this out right here with how many days of acceptance do they have to get it to you. They hereinafter shall refers to due date. Buyer shall then have how many ever days to review it. And despite the good faith effort, at no fault of the buyer cannot obtain the above mentioned documents. Buyer shall notify the seller in writing the blank days that they don't have it, and the seller shall have blank days. It's kind of redundant. I don't know. They added this last year, I think. So shall then have blank days with which to provide the necessary documents, else buyer may void the contract, blah, 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 blah. Again, buyer shall have blank days after receipt to review it. So I think there's a lot of redundancy here. kind of read through it and fill it in as fill in the blanks appropriately. If there's other provisions, you would write them in here. All right, the infamous contingency. This is what you do if your buyer's house is either one, not on the market, two, on the market but does not have a contract on it. You must use this contingency of sale and closing. Okay? This is the form. Again, they're not real strong in our current market because there's very few sellers are going to accept a contingent offer when they can get a full-blown offer, if they wait another hour. So there's a way to use this form strategically, though. If your buyer can buy the house without selling, you can use it to buy time for your buyer, maybe. I've used it that way before. My buyers had the cash to buy house number 2 without selling house number 1, but they used this contingency form to buy it in time so they wouldn't have to do it right away. I had their Norton Commons townhouse listed at the time, and we did this to give them time to sell the Norton Commons house before they closed on the other one. They ended up dropping the contingency and closing anyways. You remember the house guy down in Dorsey? They did like $150,000 worth of renovations. Crazy. But the way you use this form is addendum number whatever. Now make sure to count your addendums correctly. You already got an addendum out there. This is the only addendum attached, but addendum number 1 here. So if there's another addendum, whatever, but put it accordingly, because appraisers and lenders kind of get nuts about not addendum numbers. Put all the information at the top. This contract is contingent on the sale and closing of buyer's property. Time is of the essence with regard to all dates and times in this contingency of sale. Again, this one, the time is of the essence form. It doesn't happen when it's supposed to happen, it's dead. So the contingency will last till whatever date you put in here. Usually you go out 60 days, 90 days, about as long as I've ever seen. That's how long contingency lasts. You will have blank days from acceptance to be listed with a realtor. They cannot list it for sale by owner. It must be listed with an agent, whether that's you or Billy Bob's flat fee, whatever. It has to be on the MLS. So they have to be listed within how many ever days you put here. Usually 7 is about as long as that if you want to go out. The buyer can release this contingency of sale on or before the contingency deadline with written notice to the seller. If seller receives another offer to purchase seller's property, which seller conditionally accepts in writing, seller shall notify the buyer of saying the buyer shall then have blank hours from such notification to release this contingency of sale. Now, usually you're going to see 24 or 48 hours in that box right there. If you represent the buyer, you're going to put 48 hours. Many times the sellers, they don't want to wait 48 hours. They'll put the counter with 24 hours. So here's where it gets a little tricky. We had a mediation over this paragraph a couple of years ago. There was a 24-hour first right of refusal here. Another offer came in. Okay, buyer number 1 at that point had 24 hours to either drop, move, to void the contract, let buyer number 2 move in the first place, or drop the contingency and buy the property. Buyer number 1 had the contingency in place, had the ability to buy the house without selling their other house. But his agent didn't know that. What's the very first thing it says right here? You cannot release you cannot send over a document saying that you're releasing the sale, the contingency and moving forward with the purchase unless you provide written evidence of their ability to buy to own house number 2 having not sold house number 1. Okay, this agent, who was a broker at the other different company, he released the contingency, dropped the contingency for his buyer, but he did not provide the written evidence. The agent came to me and said, "Hey, Brad, here's what happened. He released the contingency, but he didn't send me anything stating that they could actually do it." So, well, in fact, the second offer was stronger. So I said, "You're free. He didn't provide the documentation, so you're free to accept offer number 2," which she did. Well, then broker number 1 took us to mediation, saying, because he thought, he said his people were buying the house, and she said buyer number 2 was buying it. So he took us to mediation. Mediation was over in like 10 minutes. Because it doesn't take a rocket science to read line 25. What's it say?
Do not close.
No,
Sorry. Provide a written evidence of buyer's ability to purchase, sell the property without having sold the buyer's property.
yeah, you cannot release a contingency and move forward with purchase without proof. Can't do it. So immediately after the mediation, the mediator said, it's written right here. This is what you did not provide. Therefore, buyer number 2 is buying the house. This is pretty important. So here's where you have to make a decision. All deadlines set forth in paragraph 10 of the contract. What's paragraph 10? Inspection. Okay. All deadlines set forth in paragraph 10 of the contract shall be calculated as follows: either from the date of acceptance or from the date of the release of the contingency. Okay, let's talk about why would you do this one versus this? Why would you do your inspections up front as opposed to waiting until you release the contingency because you got an offer on your house?
Because if you do your inspections after the contingency and you've held it up that whole long time, it's a stronger offer to do them up front.
That's your
It's a stronger offer. It's a stronger offer. If you want to do the inspections up front, it's like, hey, we're gonna take this property and go through that process. Is there a legal?
I'm gonna give you the right. That's one of the,
Yeah.
But the main reason you want to do it, okay, you have found this house is their dream house, right? They love it. They sold. They have a contract on their house. Okay, they're waiting to do inspections. They didn't do inspections up front. They waited until they released the contingency to do inspections. Okay, so they have a contract on their house, which is a binding. They signed a listing agreement. They have an accepted contract on their existing home. They put that they were going to do the inspections at the release of the contingency of sale. They release the contingency of sale, then their inspection timeline is set. They do the inspection, they find out that the foundation requires $30,000 worth of repairs. Is it still their dream house?
No.
What happens to their house that they're living in now?
It's going to sold.
They still have to sell. It happens all the time. And I get the calls from Brad, they've got their house, they don't want the one, they did their inspections and they couldn't agree on the inspections, blah, 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 blah. How come, but they don't want to sell their house. Well, they have to sell their house. Or they can, a lot of legal ramifications. So the answer is, you want to find out right away if this is really an agreement. Because, again, it could have any numerous, you guys know how many different things come up during inspection. And if it has the $30,000 worth of foundation issues, the seller may not be willing to fix it. So their dream house could turn into a money pit pretty quick.
So which one are you saying?
You're better off doing your inspections right away. That way, you can work through your inspections, get it worked out in advance. And if you can't work it out, then you can pull their house off the market if they haven't already sold it. They may be fine with selling it, moving in with their parents or whatever. But a lot of people A lot of people try to time it so they don't have to move twice. So that's my suggestion. But again, it's costing, but again, it's costing your buyers money. If they don't sell their house right away and they can't buy without selling, then, I mean, they can buy without selling, they definitely want to do it right up front. So anyway, this one means all the other dates in the contract, you're going to check right here after the release. Okay, which means your closing time period is going to start after the release. And you can't put when you write a contingent offer on the closing day, you can't put a specific date because you don't know when you're going to release the contingency. So you have to do a date range if you're writing a contingency. Okay. This is something they added last year. If this contingent of sales release contracts closing of buyer's property. And what you want to write in here, if the house is delayed in closing, how long are you willing to wait after the contractual closing date? How many days are you willing to wait to get it to close if it's not ready to close? I typically tell people to write 10 days. Does that make sense? I mean, stuff's coming up all the time now with lenders. Seems like a lot of stuff's not closing at the time. All right, any questions about that? You're the listing agent. This is the form that your buyer's going to get from the listing. You're going to get notification to buyer that another offer has been conditionally accepted. What's that mean? It's been conditionally accepted. Contingent on the release of the contingency that buyer number one wrote. So the address, the contract dated, the marked as addendum number, whatever you wrote on there, addendum number one or whatever, then the seller signs right here. Buyer's response. The buyer has three options. He's got an accepted contract on the house, so he's releasing the contingency, and it's still contingent on the close, though it may still be contingent upon the closing of another property. This means you got a contract on his house. The other option is that he has not sold his other house, but he has proof that he can buy it without selling. It's called a bridge loan, or he's got cash in the bank. But the first thing it says right here, this is the very first thing, is providing written evidence along with this response. That broker did not read or did not understand this, and took us to mediation and lost. Or the buyer voids the contract because they haven't sold their house and they can't qualify for a bridge. Does that make sense, y'all? So you will, if your buyer you get this for your buyer, then the best thing to do if you write a contingency and they're fairly financially qualified, get the bridge loan approval, get that up front. Because if you get a 24-hour notice of the first right of refusal on a Saturday morning, what if you can't get a hold of the lender on the weekend? You're not going to be able to release the contingency because you can't get proof that they can buy houses, or they can own two houses. So you need to get that up front.
Question.
Yeah.
So if the first offer is contingent on the sale and close,
Uh-huh.
and then the next offer has zero contingencies at all, in this box A, they're going to release the sale, but then it's still contingent on the close. But you'd rather have the one that has no contingency. But you've already agreed to it originally, right? So you can't go back and.
Well, no, the buyer number one has allowed all of their legal,
Original.
all of their legal options,
Okay,
which are right here.
Yeah.
The seller can't say,
right,
nope, I'm done with buyer number one, I'm going to take number two.
right.
You have to give buyer number one the option to
To
do what.
still have the contingency
Yeah.
in place, because we agreed to it originally.
Well, yeah, they would have to release it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the termination and release form that you sign when you want to get your earnest money back. Again, has to be signed by both brokers and buyer and seller.
Let me know if you need the verbiage if the other agent won't sign, because I have that for you.
It says termination and release. What does that mean?
The release and,
It's a termination of the contract and the release of all liability.
Oh.
Yes, you're releasing them. Once this is signed, all liability is released for both parties. And it's either the earnest money would either be returned to your buyer, or if the seller agrees to take the earnest money as liquidated damages, then you would check this. Then here's an example of delayed possession agreement that we talked about earlier. Read through it. You can ask for so many, there's a lot of options. You can ask for, a daily rental rate if you want to. If it's more than like a few days, many times they'll, take the mortgage payment, divide it by 30 or whatever, and have them pay that per day, whatever. And you can get creative and put whatever you want in here. Again, both parties have to agree to it. All right, this is an example of an inspection recommendation form. Okay.
The general one, not yet.
Again, all these documents, most of them are available to you guys on our different systems, different platforms. But if there's something you want, I'll be happy to email it to you in Word format where you can change the name to protect the innocent. Your home inspection recommendations. All right, now here, lastly, we have an example of a repair request. Okay, I'm a firm believer in you spend how many hours driving these people around? You've written 10 offers before you've gotten one accepted. Why don't you spend a little bit of time putting together a really nice and neat, easy to understand repair request? Because you know what we usually get? We usually get friggin' just a list, blah, 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 blah. Or they send over the entire inspection report and say, fix everything on the summary.
I love Robin Burton on her list.
Oh, I know. She puts it on there, but half the people, agents don't read the agent notes, so it doesn't matter.
Literally said, seller does not request Lord.
So the way I recommend doing this is breaking it down into different, like, if you call something a handy, certain things don't require a license contract. So I like, sometimes I call stuff handyman issues. There were quite a few items on this repair request, but I broke them down into licensed trade, like there's plumbing issues, had repaired by licensed plumber with receipts provided prior to closing. Now we have to receive 3 days prior to closing. We don't usually get them because they wait till the day before closing to start the repairs. HVAC contractor, blah, blah, blah. And I sold this house and it closed and everybody was happy. But let me show you this right here. Get ready to hand this to you people that were awesome enough to last the whole time. I don't like to hand these out in advance because people like to try to search through all the documents. This is basically a summary of all the paragraphs of the contract. With the contract is all kind of all together, and sometimes it's hard to break out the important stuff. So this is something you can refer to that explains all the different paragraphs and what the ramifications are.
Can you make sure that Whitney Brown gets some of these?
Oh my God. This will be my last class I ever attend.
Whitney, I think you've got this already.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think I have the whole thing memorized. I could probably recite everything without having to even look at it.
So anyway, this just gives you, and again, you guys are new, especially new people. consider this, you don't get ELE credit for this, but man, take the time to learn. There's like, how many, I don't even know how many documents in our forms documents, but there's a form for almost everything. We've covered a lot of them in here. There's a lot of others. Familiarize yourself with all the forms, how to use them. Make sure you understand that sales contract. I mean, understand it. That's why I handed you the second sheet. Anybody on Zoom that wants the second sheet, shoot me an email. And just learn this thing, because the better you know it, number one, you'll be able to explain it to your buyers. Number two, you won't get yourself in trouble and potentially cost yourself a lot of money, because there's so many ways to lose money in this business. I mean, you work with somebody for months and you forget to write the thing. They need $5,000 in closing costs. You forget to write that in paragraph 28. Well, guess what? Your $6,000 commission just turned into a $1,000 commission. So I mean, just really, really, really take notes. Keep a file. Keep a offer notes for every client. This one needs this. This one needs this. That way, when you're writing up the offer, you have it there. You won't miss it. See what else? I'll show you what Robin writes on hers. I'm not a heavy lister like Scott. All right, this one's there's too many things on this one. Let me find us something. Okay. And home inspectors, you're going to get an inspection report back from the home inspector, and they're going to say certain things need further evaluation. The roof, the HVAC, water, whatever it may be, they're going to say further evaluation required. Well, guess what? We get repair requests all the time. Seller shall have the HVAC system evaluated. What does that mean? You're asking the seller to do an inspection for your buyer? I mean, think about this. What if their brother-in-law is an HVAC technician? You know, I mean, you need to do, that's why you want to get your inspections done as early as possible, so you have time. If the roof needs evaluation, the crawl space needs evaluation, HVAC needs it, that's your job. It's the buyer's job to inspect the entire house, not the seller's job to inspect their own property. But agents do this all the time. So what Robin started doing, now we're doing it pretty much all. Regarding repairs, see if I can. Regarding repairs inspections, please do not send the entire inspection report with the repair request. Seller will not inspect or evaluate their own property. And she not only puts it in agent notes, she tells them, don't ask me to evaluate. Don't ask my seller to evaluate their agent. That's your job. Agents need to have. You need to have a list of people, go-to people. You need a foundation person. You need an HVAC person. You need a roof person. You need people that you can get to look at these houses, okay, to do the further evaluation. You need to have them on call. So it takes time to acquire those people. Typically, we have a very good relationship with a foundation company here in town, okay? But we don't just call them to inspect the foundation. We actually use them to repair the foundation. It's kind of like Harry Borders. There's agents every day that call or email Harry that never close with Harry. So it's the same with your affiliated business people, your people that you have relationships with. You can't just use them to inspect the foundation. If you need to send them business. Okay. Insurance people, sometimes the house you're marginal about whether it's in the flood zone or not. Insurance people have special tools, I guess, to determine that. But if you start calling an insurance man every week or twice a week for a flood, to find out what the flood insurance is gonna be, but you never send him any insurance business, he's not gonna really, not gonna appreciate it. So you need to develop relationships with other vendors, but you need to use them to actually do work so that they can get paid instead of just using them for their information. That makes sense? See if I forgot anything. Probably. Is there any questions about anything? Again, the first time you do one of these things, don't hesitate to, you can email the offer to me. Let me look it over before you submit it. I'll be happy to. I'd rather look at it in advance and say, hey, what about this, as opposed to getting it accepted and get the call, hey, I put this, how do I fix it? If something, if again, it's easy to fix before you do something. You do something, it's hard to undo it. So I don't mind doing that at all, unless I'm in the middle of something. I may have to wait a few. But anyway, I'm Jennifer. Am I available for questions?
Always, you're the best friend.
So utilize me as much as possible and sell some houses.
Yeah.
No
Thanks, Brad.
questions? Well, you will have some.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you guys,
Thanks, Brad.
especially all you experienced people, because that really makes me happy.
Always learn, I know I do.
Thanks, Brad. You're the best. Scott, you're not.
Yeah.
Bye, Whitney.
Bye, Jen.
Stay out of trouble.
Bye, everybody.
Not likely. Not likely.
Not at all. I'm not the broker, but she defaults when Brad is either out of town.
I'm not either. She'll call me too.
I'm like,